As a result, towns, and all 39 cities and towns in Rhode Island are affected. Towns have been stripped of many of the powers and a lot of the discretion that we would normally have when reviewing a comprehensive permit project. For example, the General Assembly set a required minimum number of bonus housing units a developer may construct over and above what the town has determined appropriate for a particular zone. So that is why, while many of you are questioning that we have one application in an R120 zone, how does that relate to the number of units that's being proposed? It is in fact because of this law. In addition, the General Assembly has made it possible for projects to be located in any zoning district, even a zoning district that wouldn't normally allow multifamily housing. Similarly, the General Assembly has specifically defined the five limited reasons that a town may deny a comprehensive permit project, which further limits our discretion. Please understand what we are saying. We do understand that there is a need for affordable housing in every community in Rhode Island, and many of us want to be able to see our children and our family members be able to stay. And housing is very important. But we have to address this by following the law as it is laid out, and it is a delicate balance. We believe that the developers that are in front of us, along with their attorneys, are experienced and so far have shown a willingness to work through this process. But we also know that they are aware that this board will strictly hold them to their burden of proof, which is required for every element that we have to review. So I hope that explains a little bit of why this doesn't seem to comport with our local zoning. For both of these projects tonight, we're going to follow the same format. We'll invite the applicant up to do a presentation, so you'll see an overview of that. Once they're finished, we will allow the public to speak. Obviously, there are a lot of people here tonight, and we have a very long agenda, so we will ask you please to keep your comments to not more than 3 minutes so that we can get through all of them. Once that's done, we will call on our consulting planners who have done extensive reviews of both of these projects to share their reviews, as well as our consulting engineer. They are all with us tonight. We have Ashley Sweet, who is our regular consulting engineer, Sue Mara, who is consulting on one of these projects, and Jim Reardon, who is sitting in for our regular consulting engineer, Nathan Michael. And finally, we have with us to guide us through this evening, Todd Romano, who is our legal consultant. Once our consulting engineers and our consulting planners have made their presentation, then after that, the board will begin our questions and our deliberations. So if everybody's ready to get started, I will call on the first applicant, which I believe Mr. Mancini is here with his team, to come up to the front. Mr. Mancini, would you like the projector?
No, I don't think we'll need it. We got our boards.
Okay. In that case, once you get settled, if for a minute you will introduce yourselves and your relationship to the project along with your team, that'd be very helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, John Mancini. I represent the applicant with respect to the project that is before you, which, as the chairwoman has described, as a comprehensive permit. And with me this evening, I have Molly Titus from Dupree Engineering. Molly is the project engineer who's worked on this project since its inception. And I know there's a lot on the agenda, and we've actually had the opportunity over several months to really kind of discuss this project with the town's consultant, with the town's solicitor, and really have developed a different proposal and a different project than what was initially before the board almost a year ago, back in November of 2023. As was elaborated, this is a comprehensive permit, and it's governed by Rhode Island General Laws 4553, 3, and 4. and it allows for us to do a series of different things than what would normally be done under your subdivision regulations and under your zoning ordinances. As part of our submission, we provided a project narrative which described in detail the amount of variances, if you will, along with waivers of the subdivision regulations that we have been seeking. We have compiled an extensive development team, which, as I indicated, consists of Molly from Dupree Engineering. We've also submitted a report from Joseph Lombardo, a fiscal impact study. He's one of our experts. We've also have Ed Pimentel, who's going to be testifying with regards to the comprehensive permit and the consistency of this project with the comprehensive permit. And we also have engaged a traffic consultant, Todd Brighton, who also will be giving testimony with regards to traffic. We will not do all that tonight, which is good for you. Our goal tonight, we understand that this is not a project that is going to be considered because of the multitude of information from different professionals all in one night, and we're not expecting you to digest it all in one night. So we are expecting to do a quick overview for you this evening, solicit some initial comments from you. We've also have received from the town the memo prepared by Sue Mara that we received last week, and we will have started reviewing that, and we'll go through that memo as well this evening. But the goal is to essentially give you an overview, have Molly kind of describe the plans in the development site, and then we'll come back at another meeting to further provide you with professional testimony with regards to our experts. As you know, under the state law, you have a prescribed time period in which to make a decision. Under this, based upon our certificate of completeness, which was issued on December 10th, 2024, we did postpone the clock because we did ask for a continuance from the January meeting to the February meeting. So we have until April 6th for a decision. The overview of the project, the project is located on Sousa Road and Main Road. The proposal consists of Assessor's Plat 110, Lot 102, and Assessor's Plat 301, Lot 220. The units that the applicant is providing for is 256 units. When this project was initially proposed, it had a different component with respect to the units. It also had a different feel to the overall site. Based on discussions had with the town and specifically discussions with regards to some of the goals that the town was seeking, we had a very productive pre-application meeting with the town, and from that meeting we really learned a great deal. Went back to our plans and really incorporated the comments and concerns that the town had addressed to us. One of the fundamental issues that the town raised for us was utilities. This project is served by public water and sewer. A major concern and issue that the town asked us to address with specificity was the issue of water. And our engineers, as you will hear tonight, really did that extensively over the course of several months, talking to the two different water districts within the town of Tiverton to ensure that there is water availability for this project. And we have provided the necessary documentation to display that. We also have a member of the Stonebridge Water Department here to address any questions or concerns that they have regarding that. So we can say that we have done all of the necessary diligence that you've requested of us to ensure that water is available to the site, and we know that that's an important component of the town's of this project and the town's concern for this project, especially given the amount of units that we're proposing. The second issue that was also amplified by the board at the last time that we were here, as well as subsequent discussions that we had with the board, was the determination of conservation. And the town has newly developed an ordinance, a conservation ordinance, and the town had requested of us to try to incorporate the conservation ordinance into our development. We have been able to do that. and we've done that successfully in making this project a very unique one as far as comprehensive permits are concerned, because with comprehensive permits, one of the things that the public and boards like yourself are concerned with is the ability of the developer to cram in units, if you will, to maximize the amount of density in the small spaces. Here we have a large parcel of land, over 62 acres. We've provided you the determination of suitable and unsuitable land, and we'll go through that in great detail. But one of the things that we were able to do, because of the size of the parcel, in combination with the density bonus that we're entitled to under 4553(4) and 3, is to give a good is to comply with and incorporate the conservation ordinance as part of this project. And Molly will explain that further as we go into that. So I want at the onset make the board aware of the fact that the developer has heeded the comments that the town raised at both pre-application as well as our subsequent meetings, and has incorporated that into these plans. So we've ensured availability of public utilities, and we've also ensured ability to comply with the conservation ordinance of the town, and have placed that in our plans as well as in our designs. With regards to density, we're proposing 256 units, and we meet the density requirements of the state statute, as well as calculations done by the town. And Molly's going to walk through the density calculations. We also reviewed the town's memo was provided to us on January 30th with regards to density calculations. And one of the issues that was raised in the memo was a question as to what was or how the developer garnered the density numbers. And there was some confusion because unfortunately there were some typos. And the typos created the confusion. But we're going to clarify, as requested in the memo, clarify for the board with specificity how we determined the density. And clearly our plans show that there was a typo with regards to the land suitable and land unsuitable for development. But regardless of what the typo is or wasn't, the calculation doesn't change. The density amount that we're proposing falls under that which would be permitted. So we're asking for less units than what we could actually get on the site, or what we would be entitled to get on the site, is what I should say. And Molly will go through that calculation. It's on the plans. It's specifically delineated on the legend, in the legend of the plans, and we'll walk through that with the board. But the number to keep in mind as we go through this is that we have determined conclusively that we have 47.03 acres of suitable land. And based upon the state statute, which provides calculations with regards to density, and that the density aspect here really is one of the significant changes to the state statute from its previous version. We all know that the comprehensive permit, the question of affordable housing, has always been in the forefront. It has always been part of what the General Assembly has sought to do. But in the last 12 months or 18 months, really, the General Assembly has gone back and clarified the state statute. And one of its key clarifications has been the density bonus. And the statute provides that if a parcel of realty is connected to public utilities, which includes public, sewer, and water, that we're entitled to a density bonus of 5 units per acre. And so the acreage that we're using is 47.3 acreage multiplied by the 5 units gives us a unit count, and then we add the other units that are permitted under the town's regulations. And we're going to go through that in detail, and I don't want to use the word painfully, but we will go through it methodically to explain it to the board, so that, as the chairwoman has indicated, our goal is to meet the burden. And our goal to this board is to show the board, first and foremost, that we are a responsible developer who listens to the advice of professionals, who is presenting a project that it is going to be proud of, a project that the town will be proud of, and really a project that not only meets but exceeds the requirements and the regulations of the state statute in the town. And that is not just words, but it's in practice, and you can see that by what we've presented to you to date, which takes emphasis on not only conservation but open space, as well as compliance with the requirements of density and also compliance with the requirements of utilities and the demonstration of availability of utilities as well as the functionality of those utilities. So those will all be addressed. The narrative that we submitted as part of our project also delineated the request for waivers that we've requested, as well as variances. The chairwoman noted at the onset that one of the things that is hard for boards to understand is how they, as members of the planning board, all of a sudden have the ability to grant variances. That is certainly unique. And also, under the Uniform Development Act, which was enacted by the General Assembly recently, this board in particular has the ability to be essentially a one-stop shop, where you can grant all sorts of relief that before you weren't able to do, but for zone changes. You have the ability to grant dimensional variances, as well as use variances and modifications and waivers from the subdivision regulations. So in this instance, this property is located in the R40 zoning. And so when you look at your table of uses, you'd recognize that this project would not normally be permitted within the R40 zoning designation. So as a result, we would be looking for a use variance specific to the use that we're seeking under the R4 zoning. So the R4 zoning does not permit apartment-style housing. As such, a use variance is going to be necessary to accommodate the project, and that's specifically under Article 4, Section 2. And in addition to the use variance, we'll be requesting a dimensional variance of the R40 zoning, and that's going to be relative to height. The maximum height in the R40 zoning is 35 feet, and we're proposing structures that are 50 feet in height, so a deviation of 15 feet. We are also, in conjunction with this project, are also proposing commercial uses. The commercial uses really are deemed to be amenities accessory to the residential component. We've outlined that in the plan, indicated what those uses would be and where they would be located. But because they're commercial in essence, they're not permitted or otherwise permitted in the R40 zone. So we also will be looking for a variance regarding that. And then there's a series of waivers, and I don't want to go through each and every one of them, but we will kind of touch upon them as we go through the plans. And finally, my part, I just want to also reiterate for the board the stage in which we're at. We're at the master plan stage. And the reason for that is in our discussions with the town. So when we initially started this project, we were under the old statute. The old statute provided for comprehensive permits to be land development projects. Land development projects are defined as large projects that have multi-layers of review, as the board is very familiar with. There's the pre-application stage, there's the master plan stage, the preliminary stage, and the final stage. Master plan stage is essentially the conceptual stage. Preliminary plan stage is the stage that the applicant would be required to produce extensive engineering, state permits, and other requirements that would be solicited from the board from the master plan. The comprehensive permit process enacted by the General Assembly this past year, January 1st of 2024, really changed all of that. It eliminated the master plan stage. It eliminated the requirement of an applicant to come before you at preliminary stage with all the state approvals. Rather, an applicant now can provide you with DEM and RIDOT approvals as far late as final plan, and sometimes even further, as far late as the actual issuance of the building permit. So those are significant changes that boards like yourself are not accustomed to. We, on the other hand, have not decided to take the route of producing in either one night or one hearing or at one stage, all of the permits. We have, in discussions with the town, have decided that this is a large enough project, not only for the town, but for the applicant, that we would go through the original or the process under which the old statute incorporated, which was the master plan, preliminary plan. So we're before you at a master plan stage. We're asking for master plan approval. We have presented a conceptual plan of what we intend to do, but have gone beyond that, where we have a plan that is meets all of the checklist items for a comprehensive permit. But for the state permits, we do not have the DM permit yet, and we do not have the RIDOT permit. We would be getting those permits, and we would present you those permits either at preliminary plan or at final plan, as outlined by the state statute. But what we're presenting to you this evening is something of a hybrid. It's a bit of a preliminary plan, more extensive than a master plan, more than just a concept plan. The reason being is because we've had some time to really delve into it to determine the feasibility of what we're seeking to do, and to again show the board the burden of our proof that this is not only feasible, but in good planning and consistent with both the town's comprehensive plan along with the state statute for these types of developments. Our goal this evening is to essentially give you an overview and to get some more information both from you as board members, your consultants, as well as members of the public, so that we can go back at our next meeting and address those issues, and then also bring to you some of the professional opinions that we have garnered in reference to this project. So with that, unless there's any questions of me with regards to the process, the procedure, where we're at, why we're here, I'm going to turn it over to Molly and ask Molly to basically introduce herself and go through the site plans to make the board familiar with how we're proposing this layout, and also talk about the conservation ordinance.
Good evening, members of the board. Molly Titus, Deprete Engineering. If you look to your right or behind you,
Is this on?
It is.
Oh, it is on.
you're just loud.
Yeah, you have to direct your voice right towards it.
Good?
Better.
Okay. So Molly Titus, Deprete Engineering. Board, if you look to your right, there's two renderings before you, and the one on the right-hand side was our previous proposal. So this was 339 buildings, 239 buildings. 230 of those were single-family build-to-rent units. The plan on the left is our current proposal. So this is 256 units located within 10 buildings. We have accessory parking structures, as mentioned, a clubhouse, daycare facility. Also worth noting, up at the high point of the site, there is a lookout and public feature on the property. So when we looked at this redesign, we took into account the conservation ordinance and open space, the topography of the land, the soil types, the groundwater table, and the best use and location for these buildings. So in an effort to preserve open space, we've provided 28 and change acres of open space. We've condensed the buildings, we've tightened up the parking, and we've located all of this within the interior of the site. So we've provided a 75-foot no-cut buffer. We've met all building setbacks for landscaping, parking, and we believe this will alleviate some of the concerns. You will drive by the site, there'll be a wooded buffer, you'll drive by Route 24, there'll still be a 75-foot tree strip. We've located the drainage structures at the low point on the site, adjacent to the wetlands where the water flows to now. We've provided a considerable buffer to the existing and historic homes on Main Avenue. We have worked with North Tiverton Fire District at first, which was our original proposal for water, which has been denied. So we have changed our stance, and we have been working with Stonebridge Fire District, and they have confirmed via memos and substitute calculations that they have available water supply to service this project. We understand that the water pressure will need to be augmented, and we will have a booster pump on our site that will be designed at a future stage. The next issue we have is we have a sewer interceptor in Sousa Road. There is natural gas as well as overhead power all available on Sousa Road. These will all be brought into the development to service the apartments. So the density calculation. So in a very, very tight nutshell, I tried to apply the new conservation definition of open space to the open space calc. The density calculation was done based on the town ordinance for the yield plan, and the density bonus was using the state definition of suitable. So I ended up with 3 different numbers. I am more than open to working together, and if we want to decide on which of those is the most appropriate, or if the state statute applies to all 3 calculations. As John had stated, depending on how we come at this, we are still well below the allowed density, and some of the other calculations would actually put the density up at almost 300 units, 296. So I am very willing to modify the way the calculation is shown. I just, in an effort to apply the state standard to the state calc and the local calculation to the local, that is how I got there based on the definitions. So, for example, the state statute actually does not allow the use of wetland buffers in the calculation, thus the lower suitable land area, versus the town definition, which does allow buffers. And then the open space calculation specifically referenced using the yield plan as the base, so I removed the roads from yield plan. I apologize if it wasn't as clear as I had hoped, but the line items do, spell out where I got the numbers, and yes, the 31.27 is a typo, and the 15.22 unsuitable is the appropriate number from the calculation above. Items we had also discussed for the project was not showing the open specifically. If you look at the actual civil plans within the set, there is a purple shade that is the 28 acres within the property. There's just a small legend in the bottom right corner that kind of shows what we counted and how much could be counted of the no-cut buffer, and I kind of went through the definition and met those requirements. From a layout perspective and calculation, that's really all I have to present. I know one item we were looking at is building height, and as John mentioned, the 50-foot building height is the 4-story buildings, and the rest of the buildings sit down at 43 feet, so there would be the smaller footprint buildings are also smaller in height. So there's 8 43-foot buildings and 2 50-foot buildings.
I'm sorry. Yeah, do you want me to?
While we're talking about this,
Sure, thank you. My name is Susan Mara. I'm a planner with Weston and Sampson. I've been a practicing planner for over 20 years, and I'm certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. Just to provide some background, we were hired by the town to review the application in accordance to the state and local regulations. And our goal was to look at what the information that the applicant provided and compare it to what is required, but also to look at the information the applicant prepared and make sure that the board has enough information to make that determination. And the engineer did talk about some of the issues that we ran into trying to understand the calcs, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that just maybe presenting it in a way that's like very, very specific, like here's this calculation, and it's based on the local ordinance, and here are all the things that we took out. Just being a little more specific and clear. Okay, this calculation shows this, and you can show both of them. I get that it's not that there are more than one of them, but I think looking at both of them, being just very, very clear about what is considered, what's taken out of which calculation. We tried, we tried to go in and back figure it out. And now that you're seeing that, it makes 100, it makes perfect sense. It's just for the board to review it. It might be presented in a way that includes which calculation and which language you're hearing to for which of the calculations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We can amend it.
Keep talking, or wait till after? Okay, sure.
Molly, do you have more?
I do not. That was, the overview for tonight.
Attorney Mancini. I'm going to ask Attorney Mancini if we might interrupt his presentation for just a very brief second. We do have an announcement about an application that's later on our agenda that I think many people are here for, and we'd like to let them know sooner rather than later what the status is, if that's okay. And then we'll finish?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely,
thank you.
certainly.
I'm going to turn it over to Todd Romano, our legal counsel.
So the second application this evening was Tiverton Investments. They're represented by Attorney Matthew Landry. Mr. Landry, if you could come up, please.
You can tell them this is the Friendship Farm thing. So they know.
This is also known as the Friendship Farms Project. As I was walking in this evening, I was given notice that there may be an issue with specific notice given to 2 residents in Fall River not receiving that specific notice. In consultation with Mr. Landry, looking at the law and our local ordinances, we believe the best course of action for Friendship Farms is to have new notice sent out, both publication and specific notice to all abutters, and excuse me? And the projected date for that first hearing on the preliminary plan application would be April 1st.
That's correct. So good evening, Matthew Landry on behalf of the applicants, and I apologize for the inconvenience, and members of the public. This issue was raised by council just prior to the meeting. We were reviewing the abutters list. There were 2, as I understand it, 2 property owners across the state line in Massachusetts that were not notified. The law is a little bit gray as to notifications across state lines, but the property owners are within 200 feet. Certainly, I think out of an abundance of caution, it's proper to renotice, allow adequate time for that. The purpose of the meeting tonight was not to provide any extensive testimony. It was a very brief overview. We're going to be working in collaboration with the town over the next couple of months, so a continuance to April, I think, is most appropriate, so we can renotice the meeting and address any outstanding issues that we have.
And Mr. Landry, excuse me, I'll ask on behalf of the board if you will agree to continue the time clock by a commensurate number of days between now and the April 1st meeting.
Of course, the applicant would consent to an extension of time to permit review through the April hearing or beyond as necessary.
Perfect. So we will be adding on to the time clock, essentially February, March, approximately 60 days. Is that fair?
That's fine. Thank you.
And if we can have a board by the board to extend the time clock by 60 days beyond, or approximately 60 days beyond the April 1st.
Do I have a motion to extend the time clock?
So moved.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Can we give a layperson's explanation for the folks in the public for what that actually means and when they might
Sure.
anticipate being re-engaged?
So we anticipate the Friendship Farms project being heard on April 1st, just as it was supposed to begin its hearing this evening. You will all be receiving another letter notifying you of that hearing date. It'll also be published in the newspaper.
And nothing proceeds?
Nothing is going to proceed between now and then. Anything else, Mr. Gerlach?
No, I just want to make sure folks in the audience understand what that means.
Mr. Landry, thank you for sorting this out.
I appreciate the accommodation, and thank you to Mr. Mancini, his client. Sorry for the interruption.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini, for going along. You are all welcome to stay, but if you're not, I'm going to ask you to move out and minimize the discussion, just so that we don't interrupt Mr. Mancini's presentation any more than we already have. Thank you, everyone. Temperature in the room will go down to about
Yeah. I was going to object to Mr. Landry because I have a hearing with him in the morning, so it's not fair now that he gets a couple extra hours.
You're just going to let that street sort of slide out.
For about 100 feet, it's Fall River before you touches Westwood. So like Aruda Farms, right here, Aruda Farms is Fall River, but the only way you can get to this one,
I'm not opening up when they finish, and I only bring up the public comment, and then you guys Folks, hello? Folks? Folks, for those of you who are staying, thank you. For those of you who are going, we'll ask you to continue your conversation.
We're still in a public meeting, please.
Folks, for those of you who are departing and having a conversation, we'd ask you to just have it outside so we can continue inside with the presentation that we're hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, no, thank you.
All right, Mr. Mancini, please proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'd like to do is go back to the, this is,
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
let me,
We have a very long agenda to get through. We're just asking those of you who'd like to continue the conversation to have it outside so that we can continue with this evening's festivities.
I don't think any of them heard.
If you are not staying and you're congregating, please go outside just because we can't hear, and we have a very long agenda today. So if we could bring the party outside. Thank you.
I'm sitting.
Get a bullhorn for you.
Thank you. Stu set it up.
all right.
Mr. Mancini,
go ahead.
please proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. One of the things that we want to kind of go back on is with respect to Susan's comments about the density. There is, as Susan's indicated and as was echoed by Molly, there's a bit of a discrepancy between the state statute and the local regulations. And again, we'll work with the town in determining how you want to apply which definition, if you want to apply the state definition or if you want to apply the town definition. We're fine, because at the end of the day, I think what we are going to show is that we're below what the maximum amount of units are going to be. Our 256 is a number that is practical, it's a number that's realistic, and it's a number that falls below the maximum amount. And so we're not, this is not an issue where there's going to be concern about definition. There's enough acreage there, and how we apply the definitions, or which definitions we choose to apply, I think becomes irrelevant in the overall density bonus. The other thing the other important note is that the project is a comprehensive permit, and it's a comprehensive permit because we are providing 25% affordable. And based upon our letter of eligibility with RIMFACT, we meet the requirement of the 10%. And we're amenable to having a discussion with the board with regards to the AMI calculations and the LMI calculations, and discuss the 80% and something less than 80%. But it does not impact our standing as referenced by the statute concerning the low and moderate income application and fulfilling the requirements of the low moderate income application. That letter of eligibility that we've received essentially is, for lack of a better term, it's our ticket, and it's been punched, and we're here based upon the statute, and so we can proceed based upon the statute and apply the elements of the statute in conjunction with, obviously, the subdivision regulations in your comprehensive permit as we go through the process. But at the stage that we're at here at master plan, I think it's important to keep in mind that the applicant's burden is to show you feasibility, a concept plan that is feasible, that can be later tested at preliminary with the detailed engineering. And as I indicated at the onset, we feel more than comfortable and confident that this can be satisfied. The biggest concern that we heard from the board was with water, and Molly has described to you the discussions held with Stonebridge Fire District with regards to availability. It has been confirmed that there is availability. The question now is going to be modeling with respect to pressure, and we think that we will accomplish and achieve that, and we'll demonstrate that to the board. I can, Really, those are really the highlights that we wanted to raise to the board at this point. In my discussions with the solicitor, because you had an extensive agenda, our goal was to keep it to an hour presentation to give you an overview, and then schedule another time that we can come back and have you hear from our experts. Again, as I indicated, you will hear from Ed Pimentel, who's going to testify with regards to the comprehensive plan, compatibility with the comprehensive plan, and also address the burdens with respect to our dimensional variance and our use variance. Joe Lombardo is going to do our fiscal impact study, and we also have a traffic engineer. We do have an architect with us, and they will also describe the elevations for the board and give you an idea of what we're proposing as far as what these buildings intend to look and what the buildings will look like. So with that, I'll open up to any questions the board has, and then we're happy to take any questions from the public.
Well, at this point, our plan is to allow the public to speak. So if you'd like to be heard on this application, you're welcome to come up. Again, there are a lot of people in the room. Even though we're short one agenda item tonight, we still have a very long agenda, so we're going to ask you to please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Once the public has had their opportunity to speak, then I'm going to call on Susan again, as well as Jim, our consulting engineer, and then the board will ask the applicant questions and have some discussion amongst ourselves. When you come up, if you just please introduce yourself and state your name and address, that'd be appreciated. I see we have one volunteer already, so go right ahead, sir.
Sure. My name's Robert, last name Jobin, 1131 Stafford Road, Tiverton, obviously. A couple of things I have comments on. I heard 55 feet, the height of these buildings. Are you aware, as far as the fire department is concerned, they cannot reach that except with a ladder truck? We have one ladder truck in town, which is not manned most of the time because they're out on rescue jobs. They cannot reach the top floor or the roof without the ladder truck. That's one ladder. In a multiple building like this, you need multiple ladders if you have an incident. That would be Fall River coming in, so there's going to be a delay. They're not responding from the town. If the ladder is out of this town, you're talking quite a few minutes to get a response to this. Second thing is life safety. I haven't heard anything about life safety in this particular buildings. I'm sure they're going to comply with the life safety code and NFPA 101. Is that correct?
Yes, so if I can clarify.
Yes, although we follow Robert's rules, so if you have a question, we ask that you direct it to us.
I'm sorry.
And then we may allow the applicant to answer. Briefly, yes, please, Mr. Mancini.
Very quickly. First, our proposal is not 55 feet. The limitation in the R40 zone is 35 feet. These buildings will go just shy of 50 feet, so we're looking for a 15 feet variance or deviation. And although the state statute has been modified to expedite the approval process, what has not been modified are the requirements of the building permit issuance and certainly all of the life safety requirements.
Life safety code, that's correct.
So these buildings will be required to meet all of the standards necessary for any multi-layered building that's of this height. So we'll have this fire suppression system that's required, fire separation that's required, the appropriate turnarounds for all emergency apparatus vehicles. So everything and anything that's required will be met and exceeded. This is not, again, the goal here is not to shortcut. The only thing that has changed is the approval process to expedite that. But as far as the building construction, rest assured that the pain that would be experienced by developers in going through building process is still the same.
Understood, but I just want this board to understand what this height means for the fire department. There's certainly a life safety hazard once you get above the 35 feet. The town is limited in the manpower that they're responding with. There's going to be any delays, unlike a city where you have multiple stations close and the response times are usually, I know in East Providence was 2.5 to 3 minutes tops. In Tiverton, I'm sure it's far exceeds that at this point. I wish the chief were here or the fire marshal also to discuss this. Second thing I wanted to bring up were fire flow requirements that weren't addressed. Apparently, pressure's an issue. Every time I've seen pressure being an issue with a building, volume's the issue. Those buildings are going to be sprinkled. You're probably talking about a pony pump to increase the pressure. You can increase the pressure unlimited, but if you don't have the volume to back it, you're not going to have the proper fire flows.
Sir?
Yes.
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. Just so that you're aware, part of the process for an application like this is that there's a group that meets called the Technical Review Committee in the town of Tiverton, and that's made up, they will meet with the applicant, and that includes members of the planning board, but it also includes the department heads from all of the relevant departments, including the fire department. So the fire marshal will be at that meeting and will go through in great detail all of the fire safety and public health and safety requirements. So we do have a process where it's not the planning board, we're not the experts in fire safety.
No, I understand.
But the fire marshal will do a complete review and be at the meeting with the applicant to
But I think
discuss all this
when
in
you're
detail.
just listening to the initial proposal, it's good to get multiple points of view with it. And I'm just giving you the fire aspect, life safety aspect, even before you get involved, because you're committing the town to a larger fire department once you do this. Just to bring this to your attention, to bring this to the taxpayers' attention. It's just not allowing this development to go through and then having the fire marshal review it, which he certainly will, and I'm sure he'll do a good job doing it.
Well, he would review it before anything's
But he
approved.
has no power concerning manpower. This is a town council issue. So it's all, love your word, comprehensive. It's comprehensive when you're looking at the whole picture.
Okay.
So you have to know what you're committed to.
Time-wise, I might ask you to wrap it up if that's okay?
That's fine. I just more concerned about public safety, the safety of the fire department, and just what you're committing to when you agree for this to go
Thank you.
forward.
Thank you for your comments. Next, anybody?
Yes, hi, Ron Potvin, 228 Captain Circle. I was here to speak specifically about the other proposal, but I think my comments are pretty general, and I think this highlights the point that while these may be discrete projects, they do all have town-wide impact. As a gentleman before me pointed out, the fire department would have to grow. We would have to grow other services in the town to allow for these developments, and that is a burden on the taxpayers. I am sympathetic to the need for affordable housing throughout the state, but Tiverton is not responsible for the entire state. If my numbers are correct, there are over 600 units that are in the planning stages right now. I don't know if they're all affordable, but that's a tremendous burden on the town and the taxpayers. In general, I think conservation planning should be observed in all of these projects, especially buffer zones and no-cut zones. And I'd just like to highlight required finding number 4 in the state law in this, for these proposals, and that's health and safety, which includes traffic, preservation of natural resources, as well as things like fire protection and water especially. And while this project may have approval for water, does that take into consideration the other projects that are under consideration or have been approved? They need to be viewed in totality and not individually. Thank you.
Hi, Susan Ferry, 44 Boyden Lane, Tiverton. I actually came to speak on Stafford Road also, but was horrified when I realized that they were saying 256 units on 62 acres, and I feel as though is it R4, is that correct, what it's zoned?
R40.
40, so does that mean 4 acres?
No, it's
I mean-
40,000 square feet. And
Per
there's-
house?
Per unit.
Right,
Yes.
which what would the actual math be if they had to follow that?
Their yield plan, well, I'll let Steph.
What the yield plan is. Something, I
30 actual houses?
33.
I'm gonna find it, but yeah, that sounds.
So
33.
33 houses. And of course, if it was 33 houses, I think most people would be much more understanding, especially if 25% of them were affordable houses. That would be wonderful. I understand Tiverton is not affordable. I myself have lived here 23 years, and I get it. I have kids in the school, and my big concern is 256 houses. How many of these are two-bedroom, three-bedroom, and how many children is this going to add to our school system? Last year, they were going to close the school because we didn't have enough money, and now we're going to build 600 new housing, and where are we going to put all these kids? So that is my concern. Also, that they sold off some of the land in front of Ranger, the only school they could actually expand. So I personally feel 33 units would be a great number, and 25 of them being affordable, as opposed to 256. And I'll be back on April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jason Osborne, 1168 Main Road, Osborne, Bennett Historic District. So I got to say, what the applicant has proposed this evening is a big improvement over that train wreck that you were trying to sell us before. So a couple questions for the board and maybe for the applicant is, what is the financial definition for affordable housing?
So I'll let Ashley provide it, but essentially, the state looks at the average median income of an area and then creates various categories of things that are affordable as they relate to 80% of average median income and up to 120% of average median income. So those numbers are determined by the state based on census data and the average median income of our area.
So I assume these are rental properties and not purchase condominiums?
Yes.
So, so then I guess you define it as what the rent is that you would be charging for this suite of residences, is that correct?
That's right. I mean, the calculation for rent is also based on the calculation that they do for income. I think
It's also based on household size in
Yeah.
terms of how many people are in a household. But it's not just about price in the state of Rhode Island. There are other requirements that have to be met in order for the units to be counted towards the town's 10% requirement. So the 10% requirement is that every town has to meet a 10% requirement for its year-round housing units. 10% of those have to qualify as affordable. It's a sales price point or a rental price point, in addition to that it has to be deed restricted for a minimum of 30 years. There has to be some kind of subsidy that is given to the units, and it also has to be monitored by an approved monitoring agent through the state.
Okay, so it sounds like you don't know what those real numbers are for this application.
The numbers themselves are based on what the percentage of area median income is, and in Rhode Island, you can go up to 120% for sales, 80% for rental, and it's also based on household size. So a two-bedroom price point is different than a three-bedroom price point, and is different than a one-bedroom price point. And those numbers change regularly because they're based on data that's provided from HUD that is given to the state of Rhode Island. So it's not a constant number that stays the same all the time, and the price point isn't going to get decided until these units are ready to go on the market. Because
Okay.
the number that they're given at the date that they get eligible
I
is
got it.
different than the
I
date
got
that it goes on the
I got it.
market.
Okay, so you can't give an example tonight. So let me just move
Nobody
on.
said that. If you want an example, we can get you an example, but it's not necessarily relative to
Okay.
any application
So-
before
All
the
right,
town.
so are there,
Sir?
okay, let me just move on.
Sir, just to answer that, though, the Rhode Island Housing Organization, the Housing Board, publishes a schedule. So right now, for example, I am looking at the Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, HMFA for 2024, which includes, what is it? Which includes, I'm sorry, we're in the Providence Fall River, Rhode Island, HFMA. So there's an entire chart here that says your income level by percentage, what that number is, whether it's a one-person household, a two-person household, or a three-person, et cetera. So that is public information that anybody can look up and see.
Okay, thank you. I just want to move on. So are there covenants that are attached to the deeds of the property in some manner that ensures that these properties do remain affordable and they aren't just flipped to the next purchaser of this apartment complex?
Yes. Rhode Island housing requires a minimum of a 30-year deed restriction on these units.
Okay, so thank you for that. So on the specifics of the plan, so as an adjacent property owner, I would encourage the applicant and the planners and the engineers to look at the deeds on the property lines, particularly adjacent to the 1168 Main Road property. That's Osborne Tiverton Properties. That's the one that I own. There have been inaccuracies in the past on the tax maps in that area, and that's particularly as it abuts the Route 24 road cut. So I would tend that your map is not accurate as it's presented, but I would encourage you to do the research and find that out. That will probably affect your lot sizes and your lot allocations somewhat. Also,
Are you suggesting that we need to look at the meets and bounds descriptions to figure out the lot area?
that's usually how it's done, yes, sir.
That's what you're suggesting to us. I'm just
I
trying to
would
understand
strongly
what-
suggest that, right. Okay, because that's not consistent with the information that I have, what is depicted right there. It's a little bit of homework, but I encourage you to take a look at it. Those mistakes have been made. There's been, as you know, Patricia, there's been a number of applicants over the last 20, 30 years for that site. And, okay, so the water is coming from Stonebridge Fire District, is that correct? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and that is a pipe that's coming from Main Road, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, in the map, it shows it's following a cart path, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
You-
At this point, we have not had the we have some information from the
Okay.
applicant. The board has not really had a chance to review with the applicant a discussion about the water availability and water service.
Okay, so so in the map that I looked at, it's following a cart path. There isn't a cart, so on the property, my family's owned property in town for 240 years. There isn't a cart path where it's depicted. All right, so I guess my kind of closing comments is, I think we're all for affordable housing as long as it's done in a reasonable, comprehensive manner. And it abides with the zoning of the town. So, so courtesy of the General Assembly, they have said essentially there's no need for zoning in the town anymore, and they'll decide what's right for us. And I would just say, as a casual comment, the General Assembly also brought us the early retirement of the Secundit River Bridge and the Washington Bridge train wreck. So, so thank you, General Assembly, for all of those helping us here in Tiverton. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Derek Andrew. I live on 230 Deer Run Road. I just want to piggyback a little bit off of his beginning comments. I'm a small mom and pop landlord in this town, as well as a homeowner, of course. And I just wanted to clarify, get some clarification rather on the term affordable housing. We use it all the time. As a landlord, my experience has been that affordable housing doesn't necessarily mean like a rent-controlled where anybody can go into this house and have a reasonable expectation of what to pay. More often than not, it is subsidized through like Section 8. So as our client could say, potentially be renting out a 3-bedroom apartment, which current market rent in Tiverton $2,000, $2,200 a month. They would still be receiving that type of income. It would just be subsidized through the government. So there really is no burden to them to have the affordable housing, considering their income would be pretty much the same. If not, in many instances, especially in towns like Tiverton and Portsmouth, because of the military presence, where the subsidized rents are actually usually higher than what the average person in town can actually afford. So I just wanted to clarify, is this going to be some kind of situation where rent is controlled, like when my 6-year-old kid turns 18 years old and decides to move out, regardless of his income, there's going to be, housing that's affordable for him, or is it only going to be through the means of subsidized rents?
So no, this is not restricted to subsidized rent, meaning that there's government assistance. The truth is that if you income qualify, and there are many people in town, especially young firefighters, young policemen, where it's hard to afford a house in town. So the income limits are not necessarily low enough that you would qualify for government assistance in terms of housing. But again, this chart is public, and there are many people, especially young people and young families, who are with potentially two working parents who would in fact qualify without any government assistance.
Okay, so these units would actually be relatively, compared to other units in Tiverton, cheaper than current market rent for any other, like I own a tri-family and a duplex in this town.
Their initial application had their units at 80% of the area median, affordable to the 80% of the area median income, which I don't know offhand what it is in Tiverton. Say, for example, it's $100,000. I don't know if that's true, but just for purposes of the discussion, that means if you make $80,000 per year, these rents are going to be geared towards being affordable to someone making that as much as 80% of the area median income.
Okay, so potentially 25% of the units would be priced differently than
Yes.
the other
That's right,
75%.
yes, that's right.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because
I know.
affordable housing a lot of times gets mixed up with, really, it's not affordable for anybody, it's just subsidized by the government.
Yeah, it does, but I think, Ashley, what she was saying before is that there's formulas that they issue all the time based on like what is going on in terms of what the local rents are, what the local income is, and, what constitutes your area median income out here, which is different from, Warwick, so it's priced to be affordable to 80% of the area median income here. And the other component that's important too is that it's deed restricted, so they can't turn around and in 5 years decide they don't want it to be affordable anymore. It has to be deed restricted for at least 30 years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, not to prolong this, but I think it's an important concept. Your comments are absolutely correct. I mean, what we're doing here is not subsidized housing. This is not a project that's being built because of any type of subsidy that it expects to receive either from the state or from the federal government. We are calling it affordable housing, and really that becomes sometimes the problem because I think affordable housing means different things to different people, and it's not well defined. It's certainly not defined in the statute. But although it's an affordable housing, it's low, moderate income housing. Really what we're saying is, and I think a better term for this is workforce housing. It's housing that is intended for those that make between $80,000 to $100,000. That is the area median income, the AMI, and the percentage of that AMI is the qualifier. And that fluctuates, as you heard from Ashley Sweet. You cannot today say specifically what it's going to be 3 years from now because it's going to fluctuate. But what stays constant is the concept that it is going to be affordable to those that make a average income. And who falls into those categories are firefighters, police officers, teachers, what's otherwise denoted as workforce. And those would be the individuals that can't find housing because you know, if a medium income house or rent in this area would be north of 400, and it becomes a struggle if you're at 80,000 a year. So that's what this is geared to. So if you hear the word affordable housing being used by us, it's not meant to be construed as subsidized housing or any type of federal grant or that type of housing. It's strictly for what the statute designed it for, and that is medium income, percentage of that income for qualification. Thank you.
Susan?
Susan Anderson, 1137 Main Road. I also am in the Osborne Bennett Historic District. And I have a couple of questions regarding your plan. One is, I want to thank you for taking all the development, all the housing and everything that you had in there out of the historic district. So thank you for keeping that an open space. Speaking of open space, I want to ask a question about, are you going to leave the woods like it is now? So all the open space that we have in the Osborne Bennett Historic District, that's just going to be, the agricultural part is going to be just as it is with the woods, as it is.
Mr. Mancini,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is probably one of the most significant changes from what was previously been described as a train wreck to what we're proposing now. And that is compliance with your conservation ordinance. So the intent is exactly that, conservation, and that's to keep it in its natural state as much as possible. One of the other key differences or significant changes from the previous proposal is to eliminate any disturbance or any type of construction within the historic district. So that is completely going to remain as it is now. And if we're required to do any type of surveying and protection of that area, we certainly will do that. But the goal is to leave it in its natural state and to preserve it as it is. Now, there are several mechanisms in which we can utilize to ensure that. We've left that aspect of it open for discussion with the board. And what I mean by that is we can either do a conservation easement where the town gets the rights to it in the form of an easement. We can also deed it to the town or deed it to a conservation commission or a historic district commission, something that the town is familiar with, the town has utilized in the past, we're more than happy to work with. But the way we have described it for our application is leaving that open. We're identified it as open space, but we haven't determined the mechanism by which we're going to kind of conserve it long-term. We're going to leave that up for a discussion with the board, but we're amenable to however is best, how the town believes it's best suited to handle it.
Okay, thank you. I also have another question regarding my across-the-street neighbor, which is that little property that you guys are around this little property here.
Yeah.
So right now, you have trees going over their driveway. That's their only exit. And the wall is this high, so they can't make another one in the front of their house. Are they going to be able to use their driveway?
Yeah, so if we're usurping that driveway, it's not intentional. Well, if we're usurping that driveway, we're doing it mistakenly.
Okay.
It's not our intent to plant over that driveway. What is there now is what's going to remain there. So that's
Okay,
essentially going to be a no construction zone.
Good,
as
'cause
part
they
of the
also
open
have-
space, yeah. I think that maybe it was probably someone who got a bit aggressive on the
Okay.
on the overlay.
Because I was concerned because in
Yeah.
your plan, you have there's about 125, what you call, the trees that are substantial, that are
Oh,
good.
well-
And I looked in your thing, and it looks like you're taking them all down.
No.
So that's what I was concerned.
So through the chair, no, our intention again is to leave that as open space. We're not going to touch it. We will confirm the boundaries. Once we do a survey on the property, obviously we will identify property markers and we'll abide by those property markers. We'll do a review of the meets and bounds to just double check that and confirm that. Survey obviously will do that. And once we determine what is ours, we'll make sure we don't, what's identified as open space, we'll be conscious of maintaining that as such.
Okay, thank you. I have one question regarding the water. My water pressure, if I have my tap on full, it's less than what my pinky is. So I'm really concerned about, and I'm on Stonebridge, so I'm really concerned about all of this water going to them, and I hardly have anything. So that's my very big concern.
Thank you, Susan.
Through the chair, I just want to follow up on one point with regards to water. A comment was made earlier about water going through a car path. Our plans indicate that the water will be connected via Sousa Road with the appropriate width of the necessary diameter of the pipe. So flow is going to be something that we will model and look at carefully. I mean, that there is availability, as I indicated, and we're going to be doing our diligence with regards to pressure.
Okay. I think that'll be something that at the
Yeah.
end of this, the board will have a number of questions about. Carol.
Carol Herman, 1106 Main Road. My property abuts both parcels under consideration. I want to echo Susan Anderson's concerns about water. I have been a Stonebridge Water District customer for 33 years, and for 33 years, we have had poor flow and poor pressure. Apparently, the applicant is aware of that. I did want to make sure that both the board and the applicant are aware that in addition to the pressure issues, there are multiple times a year when we turn our taps on and nothing comes out because of water main breaks. We have had recurrent, multiple times a year, water main breaks for the 33 years I've been living on Main Road in that area.
Anyone else? See one more?
Hi, I'm Nathan Medeiros of 1148 Main Road. I'm the little one. As Susan was saying, I guess, I mean, everybody kind of voiced any concerns that I might have, but when you spoke of the water line going down the cart path, that's kind of through the driveway that we were talking about. Do you know how impactful that will be? Is it narrow? Is it going to impede, or do we need to go to the other side of the thing? It's just
Yeah, if I can, through the chair, yeah. So as I indicated, the intent of the applicant is not to bring water through that pathway. So we intend to go through Sousa Road. That's, I don't know if there's an existing line there, but we will.
There's only about 100 feet of main and Sousa Road right now connected to Stonebridge water system, so we'll be extending that main up Sousa Road for this connection.
Okay. That's my only question for the time being. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Go ahead.
Pauline Nato, 15 Ames Street, Tiverton, other side of the highway. What I'm worried about is sewage. What are you doing with sewage? Have you got sewage, or is it going to be septic?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, we do have sewer. We will be providing a sewer hookup.
Oh, a sewer hookup, okay,
Yes.
so you won't have to...
No septic, no
No
septic.
septic at all, oh, okay.
No septic, no cesspool. It's going to be sewer.
Because I was worried about that swamp area, because where I live, there's a pipe going through our backyards that drains a swamp on your side of Main Road. So it comes across Main Road and down the center of the properties. So that's what I just want to make sure. Actually, it seems like it's illegal. They're having trouble with it now. It drains right into the railroad tracks, the old railroad tracks. So just want to make sure you don't add to it. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks. Roger Belanger, 125 Stafford Road, Tiverton. Just a few comments. Affordable or not, the number of the units, in my opinion, is a concern. Just a general question is, why are we not required to get detailed plans for traffic mitigation, expanded services, all prior to even this process? It's always we chase this stuff afterwards. I don't get it. Okay, so you're going to have your approval process, and you're not going to know what's going to happen with traffic and all this other stuff? No. Am I misunderstanding that?
Yes.
Okay. Then I stand corrected.
Very long process.
Okay, all right.
I kind of wish it was the way you described it, but it's not.
Well, we've been victimized with other stuff before, so trust me, that's why I'm asking the question.
with you.
Commercial property, what is the commercial business is going to be? Or is that going to be up in the air, or are we going to let them do what they want? Or do we know what's going on there? What specifically is going to be a commercial property?
So, you mean on that parcel?
Yeah.
So right now, there is a proposal for a daycare center and a dog spa.
Okay.
We will be reviewing them like we would any other commercial property and all the other requirements that any other commercial property would have. And they will need to, they will need to meet the requirements that we are, that we require for any other commercial entity.
Okay, so that's the first part, but if they decide to change things once their foot is in the door?
No, when you have an approved plan from the planning board, that is your plan. You cannot.
No, I'm talking 2 years from now.
Then they would have to still come either back to the planning board if it was a major change. If it was something that was allowed by zoning by right anyway, they might be able to simply go through the building official, but you can't simply you can't simply change a use without any municipal oversight.
Okay. Future expansion, they decide to add 50 more units a couple of years from now because they get their foot in the door again.
Again, once the plan is approved, that is the plan. You cannot alter the plan or amend the plan or build more than you've been approved for without coming back and asking to have your plan amended. Don't get to do that.
Which would then go through.
So 3 years from now, we could end up with these same people that don't care about our town asking for 50 more units.
Well, I'm not sure, in all fairness to the applicant, that I would characterize any applicant that they don't care about our town. I don't think that's fair. But just like any other business or any other homeowner or any other property owner who has something today and they would like to expand, there is a process for that. But there is a legal process, and it involves coming back to the planning board and going through all the necessary approval process in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, but many people in this town have been victimized by corporations before, and so I'm sorry if I'm jaded.
Through the chair, if I can just elaborate on it. So as I described initially, the commercial uses are what we consider accessory uses. We're still asking for a use variance because they're not uses that are permitted in the R40 zone. And so if we were to change those uses, we would require to come back for a use variance. But specifically, what we've asked for and what we've delineated in the plans is for a clubhouse, a neighborhood daycare, 3 pavilions, a maintenance garage, and the maintenance garage is essentially to be utilized for on-site maintenance, so it's not a commercial maintenance garage, a dog spa, and 16 single-car garage storage units. So there are uses that are complementary to the overall development. They're not destination uses where we're expecting people from other communities to come to use these commercial uses. So I think in terms of why we're asking for them and the variance that we're seeking, they're complementary, and so you'll see that as we go further into the process.
I think there's one more person in line.
Tricia, just to clarify this gentleman's question before too, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are also submitting property, like you're doing conservation. So a bunch of this will be deeded to some, so much of the land is being donated to the town, which would greatly reduce ability to build any further.
Right. That's right. That I couldn't have said it better, so I'll just stop there.
Yeah, you learned something.
Good evening. Meredith Mucci, 333 East Road, Tiverton. And I'm new to this process, so I might have some sort of simple questions that I could get answered later, but it will help me understand what's going on. And I'm grateful for the work you guys have already done. Again, to go from something that looks like this to something that looks like this is really this is a really big opportunity, so I actually have a question about, like, are we being forced, as a town, I don't mean as, just us, but are we being pressured to accept this proposal or any proposal? Is that correct? Am I understanding correctly?
Pressured by?
The state, or whatever it is, to accept, to be responsible for, or whatever, to accept proposals to build houses. Are we being kind of strong-armed? Not by this individual, I mean...
No, well, every municipality in Rhode Island is currently subject to the comprehensive permit laws. And as I said, the state has determined, and the General Assembly has determined, that the need for housing, and specifically affordable housing, is a priority as far as the state is concerned. And because of that, they have enacted a number of new laws and regulations that encourage developers to apply to develop affordable housing across the 39 communities. They have provided bonuses for for-profit developers to do this, to make it more enticing. And they have, at a certain level, yes, restricted our ability to review a project like this the same way that we would do with a conventional
Like to give up the zoning.
Standard subdivision. And so, there isn't any one developer who's strong-arming us per se, but we do have to follow the state laws, and this is something that the state has laid out in the laws as a priority for all 39 cities and towns.
So my question more is like, and again, this isn't about developers, it's from the state, but like, we, at the end of the day, have to accept a proposal? Or we can say, no, we don't.
So the state has laid out, unlike a traditional subdivision, there are 5 specific criteria
that we can use to reject it.
In order for a municipality to deny one of these permits, which is less than we would have on a conventional subdivision. So the state has kind of raised the bar. And made it, made that the bar for denial higher.
So if we achieve a certain amount of affordable housing in our town, do we reach a quota at which we no longer have to abide? And what percentage are we currently at?
So the number is generally 10%, although there is some caveat that once you get to 10%, there's still some options there. But it's generally 10%. So right now, depending on how you look at this, we're at like 4 1/4. Okay. Hang on a second. But that's based on the state's once-a-year snapshot, and that number's in the state's might sort of fixed for the year. However, we have added additional units since the last count. We also had, in the past, we had one manufactured home community that counted. They actually aged out of their 30-year deed restriction. They were early adopters of this, and they've aged out. However, there is a program that allows us to count for half credit manufactured homes that meet certain criteria without them being deed restricted. So there's no, it doesn't affect the property or homeowner at all. And we have hired or are engaging a monitoring agent to do that. So between what we've added and once that process is done, we're going to be closer to 5.5 or so.
And as proposed, where would this project put us in that percentage point?
I don't know that I've done the calculation.
Still very
on
far
that.
from 10%.
Still below
That's the point.
10%. It is not easy to get there.
So then, I think the last thing I really wanted to say was just that my attitude towards projects like this, and again, like excellent work getting from there to there, thank you. But like we have an opportunity here to do something like to put Tiverton on the map and to make us proud. And like, we just tore down an amazing historic building that I was proud of and I miss. But this is a different opportunity, and to maybe do something that's like really green. And this is going in that right direction, right? But like, okay, we have a water issue. Can we build into the project water conservation efforts that they use in other countries, like low flow timers? In some countries, they put, little timers on there, and it sounds silly, but it's very modern and it's thoughtful, and there are possibilities there. So anyway, I just wanted to encourage everybody. Oh, I did have one more question. At the end of the day, is this up to you guys to decide, or do we get to vote?
No.
Not tonight, not tonight.
Frankly, for those of us on the board, it would be really swell if the public could vote, because then, we wouldn't have to. But at the end of the day, the planning board will actually have to take a vote.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, 3 minutes though, Peter.
Thank you.
I think you're the last. I think you're the last tonight. So.
Well, I know you expanded the others, that I want to try to keep it down, just questions, and most of the questions have been answered for me already by being last.
Excellent.
So Trish, Pat, my questions, my points are just questions, so if somebody will take a note, maybe they'll answer during the due process of this review.
Thank you, Peter.
And I know green space was on my mind, and maybe there'll be some restrictions by the town, and who's going to use this, the owners or the tenants of that property? Will it be open to the public? Will it be protected? That's very a major concern. I want to see what those answers are. And the commercial, very limited commercial so far, but is this open to the public too? Somebody can bring their dogs through a dog spa there and be more traffic coming in and out of that property? Will that be considered, when you review this application? And the other unit, what is it? A spa, dog spa, and a daycare facility. So is that going to be limited to just that property? You should find out about that. The standard of life or the quality of life in that development should be sufficient that these people that live there will enjoy that property, not being overcrowded and conflicts and disturbances. It should be a nice place to live. So that's one thing the planning board and the town should emphasize, that this is going to be one of the big main factors in trying to increase this town. What is the number of residents that's going to be increased in this project? Seems like it's going to really have an impact on the population. And population causes problems with traffic. I know there's going to be a traffic study, but every traffic study that you and I have been involved with, there's no follow-up. There's more increased traffic. There should be some means where Main Road will be improved one way or the other by the developer or the town or the state. All we do is put people in the town, and we don't observe the traffic flow, and we cause problems for ourselves. And the other factor is state law, this comprehensive plan. I think it's pretty good in one sense, that it gives the board the opportunity to do the waivers for variances on their own without going to another board and getting all this baloney. But it seems like it's one-way aspect, that you give relief, but there should be some type of control too. Does this state law comply with our comprehensive plan, the town comprehensive plan? Is it keeping its nature, its character intact? And I would like to know, I don't want these answers to what I just mentioned right now, but I would like to see the 5 points where you guys can review it heavily and see why it could be rejected in one way or the other. I'd like to see those points declared tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful comments. I'm going to ask Susan if she'd like to make some more comments on her notes, and then if Jim's got some comments to make on the engineering, and then the planning board will be able to ask some questions and have some discussion with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. A lot of the issues that we identified have been discussed, but What we recommend that the board also require for their review of this are some clarification on the dimensional relief requested. There was mention of relief related to side and quarter yards, and we weren't sure what that referred to. Okay, just clarifying there, we talked about the density calculations, and I think what the engineer had suggested in showing, being more specific about like what are the criteria for each of the density calculations, what are the things that are being taken out as not developable land, what are your assumptions as far as the yield plan, will help to clarify that for us. We were looking at the change in the number of units, affordable units, and wondering if the AMI proposed will be the same, which was the 80% with the original approval for this project. There were some other issues that may not need to be solved right now, but we wanted to flag as potentially important, and these are site issues related to snow storage, waste removal, fire suppression, and school bus access if required. The parking calculations we were able to get pretty specific on, but not fully specific because we needed a little more clarification on the proposed commercial uses. So clarification on them is important. And then the open space, and that's also related to the calculation. We talked a little bit about because the open space is calculated based on what land is open, available for development. And the engineer did mention that there's like a little bit of an overlay, but just a little more clarity in terms of what the open space parameters will be. It looked like there was some, I'm calling it open space, but this is the 50% required conservation area. It looked like there were some amenities also located on some of the area proposed for conservation, and we wanted to understand like a little bit more about that. And I think there were some questions tonight too as far as what the plans are, because for approval there will need to be a maintenance plan, and so that information about like what forested areas are to remain are pretty important to understand what is proposed and how it will be maintained. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. My name's, need to do this. My name's Jim Reardon from Weston and Sampson Engineers, 32 years in the business and lead AP. So we put together a peer review memo related to the engineering at the site. We know that the project is currently at a very conceptual stage, master plan, of course, and so we're looking forward to being able to do a more thorough review of this once the engineering's complete and there are more calculations and so on. So we'd make that point at the beginning. We would note that we did review the environmental site assessment, the Phase 1 site assessment that was done out there, and there were a couple items in there that were noted. One of them had to do with an abandoned above-ground storage tank on the site, so presumably a petroleum storage tank, and that would like you folks to take a look at that, make sure that you're taking that into account. Additionally, there was some debris noted on the site in that ESA, and that is something that should also be considered. And then the final thing that we would bring up at this point is the fire hydrant flow test. We understand that there is going to be more thorough modeling and engineering done around the water resources. And basically, we're just looking forward to reviewing that. The current information was helpful to the extent that it could be from a hydrant test, but that certainly doesn't take the place of modeling. And that's it.
Okay. Members of the board, questions, comments from the applicant?
I would like to actually just answer, there's been a couple of comments about town resources, schools, fire departments, things of that nature. One thing to note is this property will generate tax revenue. So that revenue can then be redirected, which is one of the challenges with the school system is we've seen a decline in enrollment, which impacts the funds that we get from the state. So one of the reasons why I was obviously against Fort Barton closing is because being on the plan board, I knew these
developments were potentially coming across our board, and that we can't close the school knowing that we're going to probably, hopefully, see an increased enrollment. So just, it's a little bit of, if you build it, they will come. Some of it's built, but the reality is whatever we build, whether it be something like this or something that comes into town, will generate more tax revenue and income for the town.
School kids never pay the freight.
I understand that, but we do, for people who are asking about, well, do we have to build more schools? Potentially in the future, but we were down enrollment, and that's why when they proposed the closing of Fort Barton, they could do it by comfortably having the kids go elsewhere, so.
I think I would prefer the school department to weigh in on anything and everything having to do with evaluation and impact on schools. I do not want to be on record commenting for them.
Is there any impact fees associated with this project?
No, they're not.
So I'd like to just reiterate.
Yes.
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 I thought there were.
Low and moderate, not for the low and moderate income units.
Oh, but for the.
But for the other units, there will be.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to underscore what Bill Gerlach has just said, and Sumara's memo to the board came up with 512 bedrooms that would be associated with the buildings. And I'd like to know from the applicant, how many school children would you anticipate, given that number of bedrooms, so that we can then pass that number on to our own school committee and school department and get their response for that, because that's an important thing to know. So that's one thing I'd like to say. I'd also like to raise the possibility of a site visit, particularly maybe a little later when the weather gets a little warmer, maybe March, April, somewhere in that vicinity. But if there's interest around the table and among the board members to actually go out to the site, typically we do this on a Saturday morning for maybe 2 hours at the most. But again, that we can ask for that, but it's really up to the applicant to decide whether or not they would permit us to do that. But I think that's something I will be asking about at a later time. And I'd also like to mention that we've been talking about the town's responsibility for increasing its percentage of LMI, or low and moderate income housing, affordable housing, and that number is 10%. And as Tricia said, we're a tad under 5 at the present time. But and the applicant is helping us get to the 10%. But you're also creating more units, so 10% of those additional units moves the goalpost and makes it a little harder to achieve the goal. So if we continue to approve comprehensive permit projects that are at the very minimum for low and moderate income, which is 25%, and you're at the very minimum, it's going to be harder for the town ever to get to the 10%. We're going to have to eat up virtually all of the available open space in the town of Tiverton with comprehensive permit projects at the very minimum 25% LMI to ever get to the 10%. So you're giving us some LMI units with the one hand, but then you're taking something back with the other hand. So I'd like to start thinking about increasing the number of LMI units above and beyond the bare minimum. So that's all I had to say at this point.
Anybody else?
Yeah, along with that same point, basically,
they're giving the town 64 LMI units, but because that adds to the total number of houses in the town, we all of a sudden are down 19 houses, or it raises based on that percentage. So you get some and you lose some, so it gets, it's a process to get there. It's not a straight, hey, you got 64, and that all counts against the 10%. It also costs, in this case, 19, if that's what you end up in, so.
Through the chair. Yeah, a couple of points. I don't, first of all, part of the process, as the board is aware, we will present a fiscal impact study that's going to do an analysis with regards to the revenues that will be collected from this project and look at the proposed expenses. It'll also look at your emergency expenses concerning this project, as well as school-aged children. So we'll do an extensive study for that. It's part of what we anticipated doing, and we will present to you at the next meeting. We're not opposed to a site visit. I've done a lot of site visits, and I've come to learn, because I've got Lyme disease, not to make sure that I wear appropriate clothing. So I'm not opposed to it. I may not go, but I'll certainly make it available. With regards to the overarching issue, look, the General Assembly has made a preamble in this legislation with the goal of trying to maximize affordable housing, and I understand that it's complicated issues with municipalities, because you're correct. We're giving you affordable housing, but at the same time, with the market rent, you're constantly chasing your tail. In this instance, you're getting 64 out of the 256, and it leaves you with two change with respect to market, so it gives you a higher number. But our calculation shows that you're getting, or the addition to the market that's not LMI is 9 units, and we can talk about that as we go through the process. But you're going to face that with any application, except for applications which are 100% affordable. But those applications have their own issues, and then because they come in with certain subsidies. So it's not an easy proposition that the General Assembly has put you into. But my job specifically, is to meet the burdens to prove to you that we can satisfy the requirements. Again, as I said from the onset, we're not looking to short-circuit anything. We're looking to do a project that's feasible for the town and feasible for the developer, who has to incur the expense of developing this and make it successful.
Just a couple of things at this point. So administratively, I'd request that whenever we get additional documentation, any and all schematics be in high resolution so that we can look at them digitally. And that didn't come across this time around. At this juncture, I would just articulate a couple of things. I'm extremely concerned, as raised by a number of folks, about the impact on water. I appreciate that Stonebridge Fire District is engaged. That is going to need to continue. And I think when we talk of things such as water and impact on schools, we need to obviously be focused on the particular application, but I think it behooves this board to also think in aggregate in terms of the overall impact. So that's my first thing. Second, just I can't let it go. I need to have a little color commentary in terms of the project narratives that was shared with us. Just a couple of things I didn't agree with, and I just needed to put that out there. So at one point, it articulates that the town does not have a developmental community with numerous amenities of the style that is being proposed here. I would argue that we do have development communities that have been put in place with amenities, so this is not the first and foremost time around. And then secondly, the narrative also states that the project will result in an overall improvement of the site on many levels, such as aesthetics, safety, and importantly, functionality. I would disagree. I think, frankly, if it was left in its natural state, it would be pretty dandy as is. So But that's neither here nor there. I just think I needed to put that out there. So, thank you.
Anybody else, any other comments from the board? So I do have a few. I will, as many of the members of the audience commented, that the new proposal is, I think, significantly more attractive in my mind than the old one, and I do appreciate all that open space, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to leave it in its natural condition. So I think that is, I think that's a good thing. To the point about the number of LMI units, you know, I don't think the town really wants to be in one of those, the faster I runs, the behinder I gets kind of situation. So I would like to talk with you about, in the future, about making sure that we end up, while we'll have more affordable units, that we don't end up in a deficit, and at the very least, it's a neutral situation. I do think that that's consistent with the goal of the general law, and there's something of a discrepancy there right now. As far as the height variance, I'm hoping, and you said you would, that when you come back to us, you will have architectural renderings. That's the next thing that's going to be, I think, very important to look at. That site plan is, again, a good start, but I very much want to see architectural drawings and what the buildings would look like, and my feelings on height are going to be largely dependent on the look and the feel of the buildings, that they're not, too towering, too big. On the wastewater, and again, I realize that these things aren't due to us until preliminary plan, but there is a letter here from the Tiverton Wastewater District that makes it clear that this letter is not an approval. And the number of bedrooms on this document is not the same as what we're talking about today. So I'm hoping that that the discussions with Tiverton Wastewater, obviously you will require an actual approval, but we need to see that the numbers are consistent between the number of bedrooms on your plan and the number of here, as well as the, the other uses, the clubhouse, and those kinds of things. On the water, and again, I realize this won't be due until we reach preliminary plan. However, I'm not as comfortable, I don't think, as you might be, with a determination from Stonebridge. So, first off, we have two water systems here, two independent water companies, but they are very much interconnected, and they're interconnected because one of them buys 50% of their water from the other, that being North Tiverton purchasing from Stonebridge. So the viability of both and being able to maintain adequate water service and adequate pressure for both is critically important. As I think a couple people have mentioned who live in the Stonebridge district, in the area, they've experienced pressure problems in the past, and we certainly don't want to see that become any worse. There is a memo here from Bob Ferrari, who is the consultant who has been engaged by Stonebridge, which talks about the possible evaluation for this, and it says, this evaluation will require, at minimum, and I've got emphasis on at minimum, a hydrant test from the nearest hydrant, and could also include a hydraulic model evaluation of the distribution system. So I think that the static hydrant test on one hydrant is the at minimum. And I'm not sure whether or not this board is going to be entirely comfortable with the at minimum, given what we know about the two water districts. I think the board would feel much more comfortable having a hydraulic model. I see Jim nodding his head over there. I don't really know the status of this one. The single hydrant test is kind of a snapshot in time. It doesn't necessarily tell you what's going on in the rest of the system, and especially because those two water systems are interconnected. I think that we will need more reliable assurances, possibly than one hydrant test, based on what we know and the experience that we have with the system. I do know, for example, that the connection between the two fire districts, the main connection in terms of pumping, is at that same, going through that same main where the hydrant you tested is. I have no idea if North Tiverton was pumping at the time or not. So that's going to be something that I think we're going to have to be really assured of. I'm sure you feel the same way, because you don't want a development that doesn't have sufficient water, and we want to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood and everybody else who's dependent on the interconnection between those two systems, has the same availability of water also. So those will be things at preliminary plan that I'll be very interested in hearing and discussing. Anybody else? Last things? Okay. So in that case, Mr. Mancini, from a schedule point of view, when would you like to come back to us? And ideally,
where we are, I appreciate the comments, and I think that we are prepared to proceed because we anticipated the majority of a lot of what you have said. Again, this is not something that we've slapped together over the course of a few weeks. I mean, we've been working on this for quite some time, and we anticipated a lot of your comments. So we have already engaged the necessary experts to testify on all of the items that you've mentioned, and they have prepared reports. So I'd like the opportunity to present that to you, and I'd like to, I would suggest, because I know it's an extensive project, it deserves your time, and we should be given the opportunity to give you that information. If we could have a special meeting, I think that would be helpful to allow the board to focus on our project and focus on our experts. I have, as I indicated, Joe Lombardo as a fiscal impact study. We will have Mr. Bob Ferrari from Water testify. We also have Todd Brighton from Bryant Associates testify on traffic, and Ed Pimentel on our conservation. So each one of those witnesses is going to take some time, not only for them to deliver their reports, but for the public to digest those reports, and for the board to address them. We will give you those reports in ample time to make sure you have them, make sure they're in high resolution or however you want them. We will get them to you. My job is to get to you all the information you need and then some. So if the board can accommodate a special meeting, I think that would be the best option here.
Yeah, when I spoke with you and Mr. Landry last week, I guess it was because I anticipated both of you coming back to us in March.
Yeah, we're going to dump Mr. Landry. We're done. He's on his own.
So my point is, I don't know if you need to have a special meeting in March, because we will not have Friendship Farms in March.
And to be honest,
my issue is that I have something, and the experts have something on March 4th, because I anticipated that we wouldn't be going on March 4th, so I released them from that date, including myself. So if we could have something before then, I guess, or...
So, Mr. Mancini, one of the difficulties is that we're in the middle of a very significant zoning rewrite and update. And so this volunteer board has already got special meetings, and we're actually going to talk about that. And I'm reticent to ask the board for too many special meetings. It might have been good had we talked before you had released folks, because I think we could have accommodated you on March 4th. So I don't know quite where that...
Well, can I suggest that we piggyback on one of your zoning meetings and...
No. I'm going to tell you right now.
Thought I'd ask.
Those are long and complicated and use all our brain cells.
I know they are.
We've got 18 March on our schedule for specials.
We could do the 18th of March. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm here then. Though.
I'm not.
I'm not. Todd's not.
I'm not available.
No.
But Tuesdays are tough.
To do. Well, would it be possible for us, Todd, to, because I'm not sure everybody has their schedule that far out in front of them, for us to poll the board and try and get back to Mr. Mancini with a date before March 30th, that we could do this? I don't want to put it on the 4th with Friendship Farms coming back.
They're not coming back on March 4th.
Oh, they're not?
Friendship
I mean,
Farms.
April 4th.
April 4th, yeah.
I don't want to put it on then, but I do think with the amount of workload that the planning board has,
I think we need to continue it to date certain, though. That's my problem.
Yeah, so we don't have to re-advertise.
Correct.
And then, we have the deadline clock is April 6th, and I think we're going to need more than one meeting before the 6th. Again, I don't have a problem extending that, but I want to at least see how far along we can get.
Can I always say the 4th and then open it and close it, just to,
Oh, we can do that.
Save the.
Let's continue it to the 4th, and then we can give a new date on the 4th, yeah. Can do that. See, that's why it's important to have consultants.
Smarter than you and I. Yes.
So.
And then we'll coordinate for a March date?
Yeah, we can coordinate, or any date that we'll coordinate offline on dates that would work, and then we can announce it on the 4th.
Okay, so I need a motion to, so we're agreed, we're going to continue to
March 4th.
April 4.
April 4th.
March 4th.
And what we can do is, between now and then, I'll try to see if we can get some experts on March 4th. Maybe we can do something on that night.
Okay.
That way we can, and then continue it to another date. But we can discuss scheduling.
So you want to continue this to March 4th?
Correct.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to continue Vital at Tiverton Commons application to March 4, 2025.
Second.
Any other discussion? No, hearing none, all in favor? Okay, we will see you in March. Well, we'll maybe see you before then.
Or maybe we can do a little bit.
Yeah.
If people are asking, because they don't want to show up if you're just going to open it and close it.
Because hearing all of your experts on the same night is going to be
We'll try to post something on the website. It's the best I can say if it's just going to be for a continuance on March 4th.
And for the record, if we do need another date, we're not opposed to re-advertising. So if we have to make sure that people are noticed, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tricia, I understand that I should be done for them.
I think that you are all finished if you'd like. Same with you, Susan, if you don't want to stay, right?
Yeah. They were in
I don't think you have anything.
They were in the packet.
I think
All
you're
of the
good.
stuff.
Okay, folks, I'm going to make the same request so we can move along. If you're departing and could take your conversation outside, that would be super helpful. And in the meantime, I would like to invite up Animal Control Officer Victoria Sartini. Come on up. Victoria, you're welcome to sit at the table.
You got to scroll.
I'm going to send Bruce Cox a text message now. I'm going to take him out of order after.
Welcome, Animal Control Officer Victoria Sartini. So, for the benefit of the rest of the board, as you know, some of our conversations that we've had regarding rezoning for things like animals and livestock, we are a farming community. We are a community that has livestock, but sometimes it's helpful to have some regulations to make sure that they coexist all peacefully with their neighbors. And the animal control officer has a lot of the same sort of responsibilities. So we had a meeting a little bit ago to talk about some of the initiatives that she's thinking about to try and make her life a little bit easier and also a little bit safer for the four-legged creatures in Tiverton. And we thought it would be a good idea to try and dovetail our work and figure out what things might belong in a zoning ordinance, but what things might be better served being in the general ordinances. So, Victoria, if you want to tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're thinking, some of the stuff that you have a concern with, or, problems that you see, just to kind of get the board caught up?
So the first ordinance I've been kind of working on with Mr. Marcello and Chief Jones would be to take our current ordinance regarding horse registrations and amend that into all farms have to register. And by all farms, I mean specifically more of your hobby farms, your chicken farms, your smaller scale ones that you might see just on a random parcel of land. My main concern with doing that is that we have seen an uptick of animals at large, not necessarily just dogs, but livestock, chickens, pigs, that kind of stuff. And if we are able to get it into ordinance that farms have to register, that will better equip me to know what animals belong where, instead of kind of, for lack of better phrasing, going on a wild goose chase to find where this pig belongs. So if I can minimize the area that I'm looking in and have a specific target of people I can call, properties I can go to, say, hey, is this your chicken? It would make my life, not to be selfish, a little bit easier and a little bit safer in that sense. And that can kind of go along with some of the stuff that that me and Patricia were talking about in zoning, as obviously a lot of my stuff is in the criminal nature. Animal safety is a huge one. Having the proper amount of space is important for animals, because the feces and stuff like that accumulates. Not saying that every person who has farm animals cannot properly take care of them, but ensuring they have the proper space can help mitigate that issue of an abundance of feces and urine causing critters, pests, commonly known to associate with feces. And I think Patricia can speak on kind of more of the zoning aspect of it than I can. I'm obviously not super familiar, and I don't want to inappropriately comment on anything, but having a space away from somebody's property, I think would mitigate, stuff on the criminal side of it for me. Animal cruelty and general care of animals. It's very apparent when you show up someplace if something's clean versus something that's dirty. You can see it as soon as you walk in. And I follow the 5 freedoms of animals, and a lot of that goes along with, proper food, proper space, freedom of stress. And those are aspects that I look at in any call to service I get to, whether it's, your barking dog or your chickens that are loose.
So one of the things that Victoria and I talked about, for example, and we also talked about maybe roping in the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, because they have a whole set of programs for best practices and best management practices for agricultural operations and farms. But and in the past, for example, we know the building official has sometimes gotten calls because somebody's manure pile is very close to the property line, right? And the neighbor next door is not really thrilled that that's where the manure pile is. So, whether that belongs in a regular ordinance or it's a zoning thing that says, your manure pile has to be set back. Another sort of important place for being mindful of things like manure piles or animal feces is not necessarily to graze or keep livestock within that 100-foot private well area. Some people do it on their own property. It's probably not the best practice, but it's really not fair to do it on your, if you're in your neighbor's, well set back, because, it's just not the best way to ensure that you have safe potable drinking water. So we talked about, sort of different ordinances like that, and in some cases they might fit best in zoning, but in some cases they might fit best in the general ordinances. We'll probably rope in the zoning official too to ask, where do they think things belong? We're not trying to be animal unfriendly, obviously. We have a community with a history of agriculture, and I've had horses my whole life. You won't find anybody who's a bigger fan. Nonetheless, as the town develops, doing things that minimize the conflict would be really good. And Victoria, you can probably tell us about, some of the real conflicts that you run into where, there just is a conflict between the keeping of the animals or how they're maintained and neighbors.
But generally specifically, I will take chickens as an example. That's a very popular, hobby farm that people like to do. They like to have their own fresh eggs. And I've seen a general uptick in noise complaints due to roosters. They're loud. They are loud animals by nature. So having space between, a coop and someone else's residence, could help mitigate that issue and make my, call volume for calls like that less. As well as, even in more rural parts of town, you do still see it, more free-range animals. There isn't anything on my end of it that protects it. But having an ordinance, or like you said, a zoning law, that sets a specific amount of space for everybody will help generally mitigate the issues. That way I'm not unfairly treating, the larger farm on the south end of town to the smaller farm on the north end of town, because the parcels are a lot smaller, to the best of my knowledge, in North Tiverton versus in South Tiverton.
Yep. Does anybody have?
I do. I'm still totally open to working together. Love it. When we define hobby farm, is there an accepted standard of what hobby farm means in terms of, so I used to have 6 chickens. Would I have been considered a hobby farm?
Yes, it's kind of a newer concept. The Rhode Island Animal Control Officer Association has been speaking about, which is an association that's relatively new. I don't want to say new, but revamped. So we talk about all these little issues together, and have noticed just tiny little influxes of maybe one specific animal or a few specific animals, not necessarily in the appropriate space that it should be in.
So we would be able to objectively define what a hobby farm is, so that there's no gray area, which
That's
helps
definitely a
you, and
possibility
then-
to objectively define it. I'm not 100% certain that there is a standard definition. It's just kind of a general concept.
Okay.
We might be able to do it animal specific, excuse me. I know
Yeah,
some
like-
has a limit of 5 chickens, prohibit roosters.
And that's where I'm going, right? So resident X can be like, oh, I can read the regs, and I have to register as a hobby farm if I have 6 or more chickens, or 1 or more pigs, or whatever,
I have
right?
seen other towns kind of model something similar. Don't quote me on it. I want to say Barrington is 20 or below. You're okay. 20 or more, you need to have proper licensing.
There was a time we had a matrix that allowed 12 squirrels. That the building official had come up with when he was enforcing it. So many chickens, you could have so many goats.
Do I want to know why people are keeping squirrels?
They weren't keeping them.
It just
I don't know if he had an open space on the matrix that he had to fill, but it ended up with, he was allowed 12 squirrels. I guess you had to call the animal control officer then.
There we go.
I wouldn't even know if I got called for squirrels. Not something I run across very often is a squirrel complaint. Thankfully.
So, does anybody else have any questions or thoughts for Animal Control Officer Sartini here?
I did have a question. You were talking about sort of the free range aspect. I just was wondering, how big of it, if that is an issue in town, for some of the hobby farms,
It definitely,
Is that kind of an issue?
it definitely is. I could speak personally on this. I live on Brayton Road here in town. There are just chickens, and I've seen that in other areas of town. Not personally, but work related. I see it on Fish Road at times. There's just chickens out. I'll go around to some of the neighbors, and they're like, "No, none of our neighbors have chickens." So what do I do with them? I can't pick up every chicken I find. At the chance that,
Usher them across the
it might
road.
be larceny, I might just be taking somebody's chicken. And I don't really have a suitable place to bring farm animals. Thankfully, a lot of farms in town are willing to work with me if I find myself in a situation where I need to relocate a livestock animal. But I just, at the drop of a hat, I can't just pick up, say, 5 chickens and, bring them somewhere.
It is an issue. So I think our plan is to work with Officer Sartini, on these sort of livestock ordinances, and rope in, as I said, the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, because they have a lot of best management practices idea, as well as the zoning official, who also runs into this too, because sometimes if Officer Sartini doesn't get the call, the zoning official gets the call.
And me and, previously Mr. Hoyle, but now Mr. Frank. I don't want to say John because
They're both named John.
they're both named John. But a lot of our investigations sometimes do coincide with each other. Sometimes he'll go someplace and the issues of animals comes up. He doesn't specifically know about animals, but I do. Or I'll go someplace for animals and the issue of the building comes up. So we do work together quite often in that sense.
Yeah. So I think if we all kind of put our heads together on this, that we can come up with some ordinances and guidelines that, protect our long agricultural history and let people enjoy their pets, but at the same time minimize, some of the conflicts between neighbors and make it safer for those four-legged creatures, or in the case of the chickens, because they only have two legs, that might be roaming the streets unaccompanied, which is probably not the best idea. So, anyways, Officer Sartini, thank you for joining us. We will be in touch. This is something we're taking up very soon as the board. You and I have had a couple of conversations, and I think if it's okay with you, we'll maybe invite you back for some more work sessions to go through this stuff.
Yeah, of course. And if any questions come up, feel free to reach out. You know where to find me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. So I see Chairman Cox from the Harbor Commission is here, who is on our agenda, and since he was nice enough to come down, I'm wondering if I could have a motion to move item J, update from Tiverton Harbor Commission up, so that we wouldn't have.
I move that we take the agenda out of order and move agenda item J up.
Do I have a second?
The next item.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.
My pleasure. Good evening. I didn't realize I was on your agenda.
Harbor Commission update is on the agenda. We were expecting it from Mr. Shriver.
Oh, yeah, and as we know, Mr. Shriver is, I guess, resigning from both boards.
Correct.
Too bad.
Correct.
So what I was asked this afternoon was what's going on down at the Chase Marina site. And what has happened, not throwing anyone under the bus here, what has happened was the gentleman, Dan Costa, who is the DEM primary contact at the site, evidently believed he was communicating with the town. He made a comment in the newspaper which was ill-phrased, I guess, when he said no one had reached out to him, which crossed a lot of people's nerves pretty hard, because we had been reaching out to him. He believed he was communicating back to the town by way of the administrator, Mr. Cotta. And there was a commission meeting that he was supposed to attend with Mr. Cotta, and later it didn't come. And Mr. Cotta acknowledged that it was his fault. He hadn't communicated, hey, come down to the Harbor Commission, because obviously it's a point of extraordinary interest to us. It is an area, I don't know if you've looked at any of the plans that exist, but it is an area of incredible crossover of responsibilities and jurisdictions. As an example, the building itself is on a assessor's plat, and the boundary on the north side of that assessor's plat is only maybe 10 feet away from the building, 15 feet away from the building, where he's intending to park trucks across that. So while one can look down there and say, oh, it's all a common blacktop and everyone should get along, we all know that governmental entities don't always get along. And so we've always been concerned about the fact that you have, that as one example, you have the Bridge and Turnpike Authority having jurisdiction over an area. You have DEM having jurisdiction over an area. They're proposing to reinstate what had been a very commercial site back into a very commercial site and enhancing that with more boats and more fisheries, because there is no marine fishery commercial site on the East Bay. It's Newport and it's Point Judith, but there's nothing here in the East Bay. And we are encouraged by that, but we're also very concerned by that because surrounding that area, there's a lot of residential property. And so we're going to address the issue of how are the fishermen going to behave, what's the contract going to say. He sent us their general operating rules and regulations, which are, fine about maintaining cleanliness, so on and so forth, but nothing addresses things that you're probably commonly dealing with is, the net zero lighting, the dark sky lighting effect that you want to have in a residential area. I relate to an experience I had at Block Island a few years back where I pulled my boat in it to slip in Old Harbor, and the guy said, hey, you may not want to be there because I go out at 3 o'clock in the morning, which I said, that's no big deal. You can get on your boat and go out. Yeah. What he didn't bother saying is that he arrives at 2 o'clock in the morning, turns on his lights, and puts his stereo on at volume 10 for an hour. And he thought that was funny and great. And that's the kind of behavior that you see sometimes in some people, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen there. We also don't want to have, we're trying to assist him in the sense of, look at the jurisdictions you have. An example is Riverside Drive. Whose is it? Is it the state's or is it the town? When you have a problem there, who do you call? Do you call the state police, of which there are 2 state police and 1 car that are assigned for all of Aquidneck Island? This is according to the administrator that said he knows this, he's the chief. Or is it town of Tiverton? Furthermore, who enforces the parking in the parking lots across the street? Whose is that? There's so many jurisdictional overlaps there that I've been pushing for the last 2 years when we first met with them, when they came and asked for a request for comment and information, that they needed to get all these stakeholders in a common area that had some authority, or at least to talk about how can we address these things. Because you're going to have an increased demand for parking down there, and if you've been down there in the summertime with the boats and trailers, it turns into New York Times Square, for crying out loud. It's a lot of demand for limited space. There is, in fact, an upper area that is supposedly available for off-site parking that's never been developed. Let's develop that. So the administrator appointed the Harbor Commission as the point person to advise, and that's what our job is. We're advisory. We are. I jokingly call ourselves, we're a lion that roars, a mouse that roars, because what we do is we don't have any authority, but what we can tell people is that here's what we're going to advise our town council. And example of that worked very well is the old Quality Yacht site. Their waterfront assemblage, their piers and their wharfs are falling apart and have been falling apart into the water for a long time, and we've been approaching environmental police. Nope, we are basically, game wardens. The Army Corps, that we don't have timbers floating out there, we're not there. Coast Guard, we're for emergency basis, so how did we get them to move? And so we finally said, here's what we're going to ask the town council to do. We sent them a letter, and we laid it out. We're going to tell them to approach all these entities, declared an emergency, so on and so forth. And that made the person come back to us and say, please don't do that. And they cleaned up the site. We had Mr. Costa come to our meeting. We had the articles that said no one had reached out, and we had all the correspondence. We said, you were mistaken. And we had a very good a meeting with his supervisor, who's not going to be with us tomorrow night, and saying, we want to have a good discussion here. And so that's what's going to happen tomorrow night. We're going to be at the senior center. The zoning board is here, and the library was already taken up. So we'll be at the senior center with Mr. Costa, and at least start laying, I hope, some groundwork as to where we see issues that we can help him with. I mean, I really do believe he needs to have a multi-entity meeting to say, what are we going to do down here? How are we going to manage this? Who's going to have authority? So that we don't have, 2 entities doing this. That's the nonsense of it. So and then we'll report back to the town council. Well, as I said, we don't have any authority other than to say, this is what we're going to say, and see where they move. I mean, the DEM obviously is a state agency. They own the building. They can do almost whatever they want. You know, your authority over the DEM and the state is limited in terms of how you can enforce your planning regulations to them. We're trying to make sure that they're good neighbors. I think they want to be good neighbors.
It's tough to follow our zoning rules, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, and we haven't, although we have it on our agenda, having heard about this originally, we have it on our agenda to discuss zoning regulations for a commercial marina. So that we have regulations that, as you said, protect the neighborhood, and make sure that, whatever their proposal is fits, and that, the residential property owners aren't woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning with lights in their windows and things like that. And there are, the enforcement of the parking lot, DEM's parking lot, is a whole nother question, right? I don't know who. I don't know who enforces that, but
yes, that's the problem.
But other parking regulations we do enforce. We can enforce it as part of zoning, is where you park and not parking on other people's property, and having spaces that meet setbacks and the right sizes and all that other stuff. So we're going to have to work on that, and I think you're right. Working collaboratively would be a good thing.
Do you think that Mr. Costa understands and appreciates the fact that he's got to comply with those zoning regulations?
I'm going to guess not, since he hasn't spoken with us.
He
So we're
is.
going to ask you to
He
inform him of this.
Yeah, exactly. I will. We'll say that he's got to look at these aspects of it and whatnot. The problem is you do have a network of ownership interests down there. The Bridge and Turnpike Authority will not, for instance, sell things to somebody. They'll lease it to people because they have so many easements and utilities and ground and such that they do not want to try to document that in terms of a relationship or ownership and then cross easements and that sort of thing. But I'm hoping that tomorrow night's productive in the sense that let's move forward, because when we met with him in November, it was like, we're 60 days out to saying, okay, we're at full design, let's go. And it's like, but you haven't spoken to anybody. You're going to make a full design, come in and here, we're doing this, and then you're going to have everyone saying, stop, wait, no, you can't. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is that, fiasco, because it's a wonderful site. We've been wanting to get it developed and squared away for a long time. It's a big project that they're proposing. They're proposing adding on the water side a number of slips. They have one parking area where they said they had a certain number of parking spaces, and one of our members was very skeptical. I looked at the plan and said, those are 9 by 18 parking spaces. That's the legal regulation. But while we all know what 9 by 18 is, we also know what big pickup trucks are and what spaces they take, and can you realistically put that many big pickup trucks there? And is that the more typical vehicle you'd expect? So you can say you have this many spaces. Is that functionally going to be reality? I always chuckle the 9 by 18 spaces that exist over in Bristol by their town hall. Those are town-regulated spaces. You got to line up with your car just so. And if you have a big SUV parking in one spot, you're going to be just that much tighter. And they're going to have, we anticipate, larger vehicles. You see it down there with their, commercial trucks and pickup trucks and their boat trailers that occurs down there. And they park on a given busy weekend anywhere and everywhere they can, all over the place. And there's no specific authority as who has the rights and rules and regulations. So that's what it is. It's not the Wild West. It's sort of the Wild East. It is down there, and it's just a reality. long ago, the town was offered the boat ramp, and the town said, no, we don't want it. They didn't want the responsibility and the expense of it and that sort of thing. We tried to propose to them that they could be putting in, a paid-as-you-go gate. You could have pay-as-you-go parking, and there are other marina areas in other communities that have this. And we didn't get that response. And now maybe we'll get more response. I don't know. But that's where we are. We fortunately now have them, we have their attention. Now, whether or not we have their agreement, I don't know. I mean, you're certainly welcome to come, any and every one of you, into the senior center tomorrow night and say, well, I'm here from the zoning board, the planning board, and here's what the reality is.
Well, I mean, there will be zoning things that control it, and we have the ability to do things like set parking space sizes.
Mhm.
I mean, we can do all that, so.
Sorry, who is Mr. Costa? Maybe I missed that.
Dan Costa is the Innocence man in charge for DEM of the marine fishery harbors in Newport and over in Point Judith, and will be for the site.
Got it.
That's who he is.
Well,
What I personally am fervently hoping is that we don't have to have a zoning enforcement action. We preclude that with, here's what you need, here's what you're saying you have, your engineers drawn the lines, but the reality is what you have.
They'll have to. I mean, that would be considered a major land development under Tiverton's zoning code, and you can't just open a major land development. You have to go through the process. So
I will bring that to his attention.
At some point they'll have to come to us.
We'll make a point of bringing that to their attention. It's whether or not Mr. Costa has ever done any land development. He's done harbor management. He's done, the marina, the ship fishery management side of it. Whether or not he's been involved in taking something that's raw, as this is, and developing it, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't be the first applicant that comes in front of us that, it was the first time, so we're not all that scary, I don't think.
No, but if he doesn't even know he has to come. That's my, I don't know. I don't know what he knows.
And you're going to help educate him tomorrow night.
We are. We're going to tell him that we're on his side, we're not his adversary. He certainly learned that Wednesday night was interesting. Not Wednesday night, but that November evening was very interesting because there was a lot of hot collars.
Anybody have any other questions for Bruce?
No.
All right. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Good luck.
We shall see. We do have their ear, so that's good.
Speaking of that, the next item on our agenda is the commercial marina. So I think that Todd is proposing a solution for the February 10th meeting.
Right. This is my understanding of what will happen on the February 10 public hearing for the zoning ordinance amendments. It's my understanding that the council is going to consider everything you've proposed and also send back some things to you to work on within a certain time frame and get back to them. For example, uses that they may want to permit that we've said no to right now, as well as asking you to do some performance criteria or specific and objective criteria and short turnarounds. So with that said, although we have listed on the agenda the commercial marina, construction and debris separation facility, and service of alcohol in retail establishments, it may make sense to hold off until we hear from the town council.
Well, I think the commercial marina we need to do, and we don't have to do it tonight, but obviously we have to. I think the construction and demolition debris thing, we probably need more direction from them.
Yes, we will get that.
The bookstore thing, that they did vote for that. But I think maybe to the point of, and why I was bringing up a special meeting before, we need a special meeting in February to get back on zoning stuff. We have a bunch to go through. So I am going to ask, if it's okay with everybody, ask Ed to poll the group for an available special meeting date in February and take up these things plus other zoning things that we've got sort of, that we've got to get to. We still have a lot to do. And whatever comes out of the 10th hearing, and I hope the council, and I think we'll reiterate this, is that, we have a lot to do. So if they want additional things, I'm hoping there's a priority order to them, because we're not going to be able to get it all done at once. So, so I think, is everybody okay with Ed polling in a special meeting in February to talk about some of these items? That'd be great.
A logistical question. And Todd, you brought this up last Saturday, is that these are self-imposed timelines. However, my assumption is if we keep dragging them out, that leaves us open to, I don't know, the word litigation maybe? And some other stuff.
It is.
Okay.
Exactly right. Somebody's going to say, you've taken away my rights to use my property.
Which is one of the reasons we have to finish these special use permits, right?
Which I just want to make sure, I'm understanding.
Yeah. So let's take commercial marinas. We'll see about the construction and debris facility, the bookstore serving alcohol, and we'll plan on tackling those. And then, so that will bring us, if we do that, up to item E, which is a discussion on, well, it's actually E and F, they're all kind of related together, right? Wait a second.
Well, E goes with the other zoning ordinance amendments. We left that on there as a catch-all.
Oh, as a
I'll call
catch-all. Okay. So we'll put that one on with the other zoning amendments. But that brings us up to item F, which are the architectural standards for all zones. And did everybody see the work that Ashley did in combining, creating a table and taking a stab at separating the shoulds from the shalls and the, and there's some chat GBT.
I have to replace that. You gave me the name. I have it written down.
Okay, I assume that was just a placeholder?
It was just a
Okay.
placeholder.
Really? I thought.
No.
Okay,
So-
I'm confused.
So, just so everyone understands, so this was developed from what we have already in your set of form-based code items, and so we pulled those in, and we had talked about the combining of one district, and I could not for the life of me remember the name that we had agreed on, that Bill had gotten from typing both of the districts into ChatGPT, and I was like, it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I was like, I'm just gonna put it in there like this, and I'll go in and fix it. And I think I even put a note in there that said, like, this is just a placeholder, I have to go in and fix the name. Well, I have the name, and so I'll go into the document and fix it.
So this is the new name.
Right.
For the combined districts in North Tiverton along Main Road in North Tiverton. The two combined districts would be neighborhood business and pedestrian-friendly destination. So we're combining those and we're calling it mixed use pedestrian. And actually you had 5 words that came out of, and we decided to drop the last 2.
So I'll go in and fix that, but what you have in front, what you have is that first draft at taking those, combining them into basically requirements and recommendations for each kind of set of different types of design standards. And then we'll keep adding sections to that for each of the remaining, and I can actually do that for the next draft. So if you, I don't know if you all have comments on the current draft, but I can add to that draft the other districts being general commercial, industrial, I think that,
Highway
and
commercial.
highway commercial.
Highway commercial.
So it would follow basically the same format, and just that section of the of the regulations will continue and include those three, and I can, actually, we have those drafted, so I can add those in, and then you'd have a full set to review. If you have comments on the 2 form-based code districts, I can take those, make revisions, and then add the new districts, and then we could have another review of that set.
I reviewed the draft. I mean, it looked fine by me. It read fine. It made sense. So I would just say, like, do the next round of revisions and, like,
All right, so
put it all together.
Replace the name, we'll put in the next districts, and then you'll have a full document for review, and then you can decide, whenever you're ready, you can take that to.
And Stu, have you had a chance to review these? I'm counting on Stu here. Have you looked through them? Are you?
I think they're fine, but if you need me to do anything, actually just ask.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
If you need.
So could we consider then, if everybody's pretty comfortable with them, there might be 1 or 2 small, modifications. Could we add voting on that at our special meeting in
Well, you need
February?
to hold a public hearing to actually incorporate it into your
Oh,
regulations.
good point, because they're going into subdivision regulations, right?
So at your next meeting, you can have that, you can have that full draft,
So-
and then you could vote to advertise for your public hearing.
So if we have a special meeting, right, we can vote to advertise, and then if we do it fast enough, we may end up with them at our next, we may be able to have the public hearing at our next regularly scheduled meeting. How many weeks? do we
March
have to
4th.
advertise? 3?
Yeah. No.
Okay, so, we won't
We're
make it.
talking about April probably, but.
Probably. But I still think that we should do I don't want this to get too far away from us, so at the special meeting, at the very least, we should have a discussion to make sure, in case anybody sees anything in there, or this is like sticking out at me.
Yep.
Because I don't want this to slide away from us, because they're important that we get them done. And if we can have some adopted then for April, then that'll be good.
Would there be a possible special meeting in March for Vital?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Would we be able to put it on that?
I just want to raise one concern. You have this combined zone, the ChatGPT.
Which
Chat.
isn't real yet.
Exactly. Until the town council decides to combine those. I
Well,
think this
but-
document has to identify them separately.
So we can certainly do that. I can set that aside and save that, and then we'll replace the
ChatGPT.
what would be the mixed-use pedestrian with, are you all comfortable with it just being all 3 districts for now?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an alternative at this point.
And we have to figure out, we do have to get in front of the council, the main road district, general commercial, highway commercial, and industrial.
Yes.
So those are teed up, they have to go soon, once we get through February 10th. As I said on Saturday, this council, by the time we're done, is going to be the best zoning council we've ever had, because they're going to have a lot of it. So does that sound like a plan to everybody? Okay.
And then as soon as that happens, then we'll have to make a replacement change where we take the 2 district names out and replace it with the mixed-use pedestrian once that's created.
Yeah. Okay.
Question about understanding that town council is probably going to come back to us with things on the 10th. Should we be at that meeting to be able to ask them questions just so we have a ton of clarity, or will we have an opportunity to have like a co-meeting or something like that?
These 3 will be there.
So
I
We'll try to
can't go as well.
ask some questions.
I'm planning to go
So
as well.
the council is going to vote, rather than every individual counselor giving us their list of what they'd like, the council will take a vote and determine, okay, we'd like that, we'd like something on this. I think some of those things that we will be prepared to ask for more clarification, because some of them could be really broad. And so we might need more specific direction. We're super busy, so we don't want to spend time going down a rabbit hole that they hadn't intended for us to do that. So I think it's a good point.
It's my understanding also that the agenda, when it comes out, is going to have listed the public hearing for the proposed ordinance changes that we have, but then just under that, I'm going to call it suggested amendments.
So they will be able to go over that. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So we'll know that Thursday, Friday.
And I do hope that the council will take the time, even though these might be suggested amendments, to ask us why, because I think, it would be good, because there may be some things that we've put on there or written a certain way after a long consideration. So I think it'd be good if we get the opportunity to say why anyways. So that's good. That brings us to item G, discussion and possible vote to engage a specialized consulting hydrology engineer for the planning board. Ashley, I believe that you have a recommendation for us.
So I gave you 2 resumes, and I have I've spoken with both of them, but I've spoken specifically with Frank Getchell, asking some questions, and he and I had a conversation about the fact that he has done a lot of work about groundwater and drinking water in Westport, which happens to be just over the line. So given that he already has significant knowledge about what's going on with groundwater in Westport, I think he probably, if you'd like to go with one or the other so that you have one person who's specifically knowledgeable about Tiverton, I would make a recommendation for him. I think from the perspective of, who can help you, I think they're equally qualified, but I think having Frank, having done this work in Westport, gives him specific knowledge of the area over Kevin.
And this would be part of the on-call services.
Yes.
So it's budget neutral, sorry.
Uh,
It's within the existing SOW with Westport.
Yes.
So now, actually, I feel like the last time we talked about this, we were talking about a lot of different studies and things. Now, would this person also be working with the 2 water districts as well?
Different person.
This is a different person, okay.
This person is a geohydrologist. They are specifically knowledgeable in groundwater. Not that he doesn't understand water systems, but that his area of expertise is groundwater.
And so the other woman that's currently working with the district,
Her area of expertise is public water systems.
So do we need to make a motion to?
So how would this work, actually? So this person would simply be on call and available to help Tiverton out on a case-by-case basis. If an issue comes up, we're dealing with something and an issue comes up, you can go to that, you can go to Frank.
Yeah.
And then whoever covers the cost of that, it might be the applicant, if it has to do with an application, or it might be us out of our own budget.
That's true. It could come from either place depending on the nature or the reason for the request for review.
I think it's really a step forward to have somebody like that on call. So do you need a motion to
Yes,
proceed with
please.
that?
Frank Getchell.
So I would make a motion to designate Frank
Getchell.
I'll second.
As our on-call hydrogeologist.
I will second that motion.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
All in favor? Okay. At some point, maybe when we have time, it might be good if Frank came to visit us once, just to have a sort of overview of what our conditions are here and...
Or, you know what, it might be good to just set up a private meeting.
So I can...
We don't do anything in private. We're a public body.
Oh, well, we had a private meeting with North Tiverton.
Oh, you mean not the whole board?
Not the whole board.
Not the whole board, yeah.
No, just like a representative.
Just the people who have been very active in the
Hydro.
in the water issue outside of the 2 water districts.
Yeah. I mean, I'll leave it up, I think we should leave, we can leave that up to Ashley, depending on what's most convenient.
Well,
I
I'll
just
just
think it would be
say,
good to.
in the vein of convenience, Frank does live in New Hampshire.
Okay,
Not that he doesn't come down here for project work, but he does. I can see if he has something scheduled in the near future
Or
where
even a
he'll be in
Zoom
the
meeting?
area, and then we could get him in person. Otherwise, as that one of their just advisors, are they allowed to talk to him on Zoom and not have him in front of them?
At a meeting like this?
probably not.
I don't know. So.
Okay.
If
So
that's the case, then maybe a
it's the chair,
subgroup
a
of us
subgroup meets
meet.
with him. If the whole board has questions, we can make sure that those are, relayed through the individuals that do meet with him, and then we can come back and report to the board.
So logistically, is the fact that he's based in New Hampshire going to be an issue for us when we need to engage him? I mean, obviously, we're communicating via email and stuff like that, but
I mean, in-person testimony would have to be something that we would be able to schedule, but certainly he can write reports, and we can put reports on the record.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's as good as in person, legally speaking, right?
He came down for a site visit with me one time.
Okay.
On an issue,
Oh,
zoning
and that-
enforcement issue.
That's also to mention, he's also been here and helped out on other related things from a hydrogeological perspective.
Yep. Okay,
In Tiverton?
Yes.
there we go.
Yes.
Okay. Item H, amendments to the planning board bylaws, section 3G, to include hydrology engineer as a consulting engineer and in the engineer escrow.
I don't think we need to. We need to update our escrow account.
Okay,
Updating the bylaws, I don't think is necessary.
okay. So,
Escrow account, yes.
so do we need to, we don't have a vote to take because
No.
we don't have, so maybe for our next meeting though, figuring out what we need in the escrow, how to do that with the escrow account, what we need there.
Yes.
Can be added to the agenda.
To change the escrow?
No, the bylaws. Oh, because it doesn't affect the bylaws? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
All right. Item I, discussion on impact of the comprehensive permit applications in Tiverton and bringing this to the attention of the council. This is my request. I think as you saw this evening, that a lot of people were surprised to understand how the comprehensive permit process works. I think between the combined number of units that we are either being presented with or have recently approved, I think the math of how comprehensive permit affordable housing units affects our overall percentage. And I think, there are other things in that, in the general laws that the council really needs to understand. So essentially, I am putting this on because I would like the board's support, with Ashley and Todd's help, to ask to go on the council agenda and lay this all out and make sure that they are really apprised of how the comprehensive permit program works, what the laws are, as well as the units that we've approved, what we have in the pipeline, how, we end up in a deficit as we approve these things. I think we really need to bring this to the council, and I'm asking for the board's support to do that.
I totally agree that we need to do that, because as more of these projects come before the planning board, there'll be more neighbors calling up town council members, and the town council really needs to get a bit of a briefing on this so that they basically know what's going on.
Yeah.
Not that they have any control over it, but they just need to understand what the situation is and what our situation is as a planning board. So, yes, I will make that motion.
I'll second.
okay, just to
Discussion?
get the
Bill?
discussion. Totally agree, and I think it behooves the council to further understand and be mindful of sort of the impact in aggregate as we continue to refer to it, not only in terms of understanding the comprehensive permit process, but, oh wow, we're talking about however many hundred, and we need to really think about sort of impact to services and what that might mean from a budget perspective. The domino effect of this is important for the council to have insight on.
Yes.
To the extent advanced planning makes sense here. I know it's not on the agenda. I would argue for an abridged version of that to the school committee as well.
Yeah, and most people are thinking of this individually, development.
Yeah.
The aggregate, we're talking over 1,000 homes. Right.
Yeah.
And as far as the council's concerned, that's the big impact on the schools. You're looking at a lot of places, not a bunch of little hit and miss. And I think that's probably how most of the citizens of the town look at.
Yeah.
They just see one at a time. And, well, if they don't like that, they're not going to like 1,000.
Yeah, and I'm happy to support conversations with the council or the school committee as needed. So
Excellent.
I have a question, and I hate to belabor a dead horse, but I'm wondering if this might be also if this might be a good time to talk about whatever that permit thing that you wrote up, Stu, was, or to bring it into that discussion in preparation of the fact that
The impact fees.
the impact fees.
Who was that guy that came and
It
gave
feels
us
like
the
you're going to have this conversation and not bring that up feels a little weird, but might be
conservation
something to consider. And then, I'm not sure, but understanding that this, that was presented today, which is vital, and it
been
looks
doing
like
that for a
Friendship's
lot
on
of
to
years.
open up
That's
its
what
Stone
really what the
Bridge Water District.
council
but-
probably needs.
Friendship, if Friendship can get public water, it would be North Tiverton.
It would be, okay.
Yeah.
Just looking at the map, it looks like it's over Stonebridge, that's the only reason. But,
Just a quick point. I hope that when a big project comes before the planning board that has an impact on a neighboring community, that we're sharing all of the plans and all of the background information on that project with that other municipality. I'm thinking in terms of impact from Friendship Farm on South Watuppa Pond, which is a backup reservoir for the city of Fall River. I hope that...
Notice was sent to the Fall River Water District, the planner.
Okay.
For Vital, I think it was sent to Portsmouth, is that right, Ed? Also Fall River? Or were they just
Fall
outside?
River, no, because Fall River also impacted by that as well, because they...
So Fall River Water Authority does know?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that was happening.
and this might be out of our purview, but that, understanding, they said today that this group couldn't get approval from North Tiverton Water District, so and this now large group maybe, is there any control or anything we can do to support that, or, because it feels like something might have to change at some point, or that's going to impact a lot more people when maybe those water districts, based on feedback that we received from people today, are not delivering where they're at, and now we're about to add a bunch more to that.
Right. I want to be careful not to talk about any specific projects or go off the agenda. And I think Trish is going to tell you a whole bunch after the meeting about her conversations.
As long as
Yes.
it's on radars and we're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So with your permission, I'm going to work, and I'll work with Ashley and Todd to put together a presentation that's got the numbers and, a little overview of how the comprehensive permit works and what we're looking at, and maybe even point out some things to them that they might petition the General Assembly to revisit that would help us. Which brings us to item K, education of the planning board.
We had a motion in a second.
Oh, didn't we vote already?
No, we didn't.
Did we not vote?
No, no. it was
I'm
just-
sorry, we have a
yeah.
motion and a second, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Item K, education of the planning board and a potential letter to statewide planning. The potential letter to statewide planning was mine, but I'm going to withdraw that portion of the agenda item because I just have too many other things. to do besides complain that they don't post the trainings on the webpage. But education, so
Do you
I.
want me to do that?
Do you want to write that letter?
It irks Bill.
I got my Irish up because I went looking on the homepage of the statewide planning trying to find training events, and there wasn't a mention of it anywhere. And then I went down every menu tree and still couldn't find any.
You have to dig deep, and
Yeah.
even when you dig deep, it's not what you expect.
I excel at
Then I
those
got my
emails.
Irish up and I was like, I'm going to write them a letter. I'm going to make has the planning board to vote on writing a letter. You can tell I was overtired that day. So I'm going to withdraw that part, but I know that VA tried to sign up for training and it was full.
I'm on a list now. So
Okay.
there's one on February 25th, if anybody needs it.
Well, that's funny, because I don't know that.
Sorry. Well, and I'm supposed to have work
This
travel,
is
so
insane.
I
I'm trying
can't
to.
answer
move it, but I
to you
can-
how I don't know that.
But I guess, I don't know, I write really nice emails back to that lady, so we're boys, and that might be how I got on that, or girls, or whatever.
So was that a face-to-face, or is it?
This is,
Zoom?
this one actually I think is Zoom, but let me find.
Is this the introductory level
This is
one?
the first one, this is the 3-hour one, because I've never, so February 27th, 5:38 is the 3-hour introductory, so it's my first rodeo, so that's the one.
Okay, could you?
I got signed up for that.
So you're on that.
You did. How did you find out about this?
Sorry. Once you email, so do you want me to send it?
They will.
Actually, I don't want to mess up the situation
Just
I've got
all
going with
email
Nancy.
her and ask when you can get on a training, because I
Okay.
can't transmit
And
the
who are we?
information
Who
to
are
you
we
because it's not
emailing?
coming
Which?
to
Who are
me.
you? Who's
So,
your new BFF out
Nancy,
there?
actually Nancy and Isabel,
Nancy Hess?
can I send it to?
Send it to Ed, and he'll
he
send it
can
around.
So
Okay.
there's Nancy, Paul, and Isabel.
Okay.
Two or three of them.
So,
Nancy, Paul, and Isabel.
and if
I'll send it.
anybody else hears about any training, send it to Ed so we can find out so we can go.
And if you find out about training, let me know.
And Ashley did put together a nice chart, right?
Yes. That should give you guidance. Some of those, we'll have to change some of those dates. Once you take your first training, we'll have to push, make adjustments to your yearly requirement. What's that?
Have to keep it up to date.
Yes.
So we don't get demerits.
Yes.
Right.
But that should give you all a good sense of what you have, don't have, need. If you have questions, let me know. Not that I can necessarily tell you when you can get trained.
I mean, that's a good, so ironically, I just got the latest monthly email from statewide planning. I think it came in yesterday. And I don't recall seeing anything about training on there either.
Training's in February for the
There's no
for the
training.
newsletter in February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much for advanced planning.
Yeah, you
get about
want to
3
consider that letter?
Do you want Bill to send a letter?
Do you want to send that?
I don't want you to send a letter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to send a letter just, on
Like,
behalf
could
of the
you make this
board that's
easier
like,
for us
hey,
to
we're
find?
trying to comply with our obligations under the law, but it's not real user-friendly, and I can't imagine that we're the only planning board or historic cemetery board, right?
Yep.
Or whatever the other board that they support, right? Like, trying to find something. I mean, like,
Listen,
it's
if
like
you'll do it, I'm all for it.
user experience 101 sort of stuff here.
There you go, perfect. All right, so we have a plan. Finally, approval of the January 7th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the January 7th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none? All in favor? Ta-da, we're done. This is not exactly on the agenda, but Todd's gonna be okay with this.
So be prepared. That is the level of confidence I strive for.
I'm just telling you, on the meeting minutes going forward.
It's meeting minutes.
Because it's, I think, given what we had, we're doing okay tonight, but I have a suggestion to make things go more smoothly. So that is, if you have corrections to the meeting minutes that are spelling, grammatical, missing a comma, wrong, something like that, either send it to Ed ahead of time or, with Ed's permission, just take your hard copy and bring it to the meeting and mark it up with a red pen and give it to Ed. If your change is substantive and it's going to, it's going to change the meaning of a sentence, or you think that an important action is missing, then we need to discuss it and vote on it. But I'm just trying to get our meetings sort of, moving along a little bit at the end when we're all tired. So you can mark up your paper and give your spelling and punctuation and grammar edits to Ed.
I also added the Microsoft Word version for everybody as well.
Yes, and you have the Microsoft Word version, but so you can either email it ahead of time or take a red pencil and give it to Ed. It doesn't have to be red, I just
Ed, for
said that.
Microsoft, the reason you're saying that is you would want somebody to track the changes?
If they can, yeah.
Yeah, if they can, which is why it's okay to just use a pen and a piece of paper too. So item N, the status of the zoning code revision committee. We haven't met in a little bit, but we have a new member, a new council liaison member who is also going to serve as chair. Thank you very much, Deb.
She's not doing chair, but she is.
Yeah, you are. Yes, you're getting the SOS login and the password. That automatically makes you the chair. So we'll get back to meeting soon because we still have a pretty good amount of work to do. An update then from the North Tiverton Business Committee.
Oh, you're looking at me.
Yeah, North Tiverton Business Park Committee.
We've had 2 public workshops, business coffee meeting, all, I think, went reasonably well. We are in the process of compiling all of the, comments that we received during those meetings, and we're moving forward. The group has kind of identified locations in the district they want to start talking to the property owners and using as examples, so because we are going to do some renderings that we'll include in the plan, and we're starting to formulate recommendations based on public feedback so far. So we're moving along.
Awesome. Well, that is the end of our agenda. So Rosemary's not here.
Make a privileged motion to adjourn.
Just do. There we go.
And I don't need a second on that.
Second. Ready to adjourn? All in favor? Yes, off we go. Thank you, everybody.